The road to a shot at $300,000 goes short track racing as we continue on the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro for 2020. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro from the virtual Richmond Raceway. I'm Jacob Seelman alongside Justin Prince and Blake McCandless in the broadcast booth with Ryan Bauer down in the production trailer as we get set to go a little beating and banging tonight, Justin Prince. We've seen this already play out once in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, and for these drivers and these trucks in particular, we've seen how crazy the trucks can be at Richmond, and I believe we'll see it again here tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be very intriguing to see how this race plays out. It's one of the wild cards we discussed a little bit ago at Michigan, and these drivers are ready for what could be an attrition-filled race. It's a difficult track, mind you. At this 0.75-mile circuit, there's a reason they call it the action track. Lots of action expected tonight across this track with a lot of bumpers used and potential for a lot of side-by-side.
I think we will see a lot of side-by-side, a lot of potential beating and banging. Before we get going, we will show you where in the virtual world we are here tonight as we give you the bird's eye on Richmond Raceway in the Commonwealth. And there we are, 14 degrees of banking at this 3/4 mile. As we take a look and get set to go some 200 laps, 150 miles, almost done with qualifying. And as soon as we finalize the grid, we will bring you our starting grid. Blake McCandless, this one going to be fun. Is there any way to handicap or predict what we're about to see?
I don't really think there is, Jacob. Appreciate you guys bringing me back up here into the booth here at Podium Esports for this Road to Pro race. But I think this has really been the tale of this Road to Pro season, that a lot of races, I talked to a lot of these drivers before these races, and a couple of times they think a wild card race is coming up and potentially there might be a lot of yellows. You get a caution-free race at Homestead. You get a pretty green flag-filled race at Atlanta. So a lot of us look at Richmond and say, well, it's a short track. And of course, all of our viewers that watch the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series were tuned into quite a chaotic showing in that race. But that doesn't mean that's necessarily what we're going to see tonight. So I'm interested to see what these drivers can do.
Speaking of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, of course, the fourth member of our booth crew is Jim Beaver Esports' Michael Guerrilla. We'll bring him in just a moment. But first, we'll run you down the starting grid and tell you where your favorite driver here in the top split of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro will be starting. On the pole from Texas, Caden Honeycutt sets the fast mark at 21.837 seconds. He'll be joined by one of the teenagers in the field, another of the teenagers in the field, in Donovan Strauss. So a pair of teenagers on the front row. Mitchell DeJong, our Roval winner from a couple of races ago, starting third alongside Will Norton. Jarrett Liebert inside the top 5 after qualifying alongside Adam Gilliland, Cody Bias, and Femi Olot starting 7th and 8th this evening, with Blake near 9th and Justin Prince Allen Bowes up inside the top 10 as well.
Stephen Wilson, last race's winner at Michigan in a drag race, starts in 11 tonight with Michael Fenlison in P12. Ronald Pratt starts 13 with Drew Freenosh in P14. Trayden Lapsevich, the Canadian driver set to make his Pinty Series debut this season, is 15th entering tonight. And the overall Road to Pro points the leader, Zach Nichols, comes into tonight looking to carry momentum from 16th. Set to Merchant starts in 17th, while Carson Hocevar, who is set to make his rear-world debut in the trucks this season at this track, is set for the virtual race tonight from 18th. McKissick and Kuhn round out your top 20.
21st, it'll be the Atlanta Motor Speedway winner in the top split of the iRacing Road to Pro Series, and Derek Justice, who rolls off in the front of row number 11th. He'll start alongside Brian Mercurio, making his debut in the top split in this series. Garrett Maines will roll off from 23rd, and of course, Jordy Lopez, not accustomed to where we're seeing him start. He'll start back in the 24th position. Jake Matheson in 25th. Dylan Rafferty, 26th. 27th will be Thomas Axum. The final driver to take time in qualifying slip angle zone, Brian Blackford, Daniel Roper, and Derek Bordeaux will round out the top 30.
31st tonight as the field starts to roll off the grid. Going to be Brayton Boulos, Dylan Jones alongside him. In the final row, Jacob Hall and Casey Tucker. This 3/4 mile bull ring, known to be crazy. Michael Guerrilla, let's bring you in on this. You've already been through this ringer in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series this year. Is there any reason to expect that we won't see some of that same chaos tonight?
Oh, I definitely believe we'll see some of the same chaos you saw in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series for sure. Richmond, you're very bottom dominant in the way you want to run this track. You want to get those left sides hooked on that yellow line on the bottom, so don't be surprised if you see a lot of jostling to get down to that bottom lane and a guy's just struggling to hold on to that outside around the other guys who are 2x2, but just it'll be a lot of chaos, be a lot of bumpers beaten in, and we'll see who can take it at the end of the race.
After tonight, we will officially have reached the halfway point in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro season. This is round 7 of 14, and it has the potential to be the second wild card race alongside the Daytona opener in this first half. And you have to believe perhaps the second half a little bit more straightforward, save for a race at Martinsville in early September. But tonight, it would appear to be the youth movement that looks like it's going to start with the advantage in the form of Caden Honeycutt and Donovan Strauss up on the front row. Will they finish that way? That's what we'll find out after 200 laps. We're glad you're along for the ride here in Top Split on Podium Esports as the pace car heads for pit road, and short tracker Caden Honeycutt on the jump. Green flag goes in the air, and we're underway from the virtual Richmond Raceway. Honeycutt on the advance jumps out to a 3-truck length advantage that shrinks as the side-by-side battle for second between Mitchell DeJong and Donovan Strauss jumps off turn 2. Field trying to fan out, but it's Honeycutt to the advantage for the first time, Justin Prince.
And already a lot of these drivers snaking their way down the back straight. We've seen it a little bit, trying to defend the old line. One truck around the 14.
So caution flag going to wave right at the end of lap number 1. That's Brian Mercurio in trouble at the exit of turns 3 and 4. Caution flag out for the first time already, and I can promise you that is not what a lot of these guys want to see. And Alan Bowes came immediately over the radio, Blake McCandless, and said he may need a uniform change after that one, but he was among those who was right in the middle of that storm, and how he got through it, I really don't know.
No, I certainly don't know how that ended up happening, but it was Blake Neer who actually took a spun right there. As you can see, Brian Mercurio, not too much damage on his low-line racing machine. But again, I think this is perhaps an early indication, Jacob. We were talking about we weren't sure if the chaos was going to happen. Blake Neer certainly, is a victim of that. And of course, by the way, another driver that really had nowhere to go here on the top side of the racetrack. You see it on your screen. There's a very successful driver in this series in Jordi Lopez, and he's going to have big damage here on lap number 1.
And that's not what Jordi wanted. I talked to him earlier today, and he had pretty high hopes for this race, but that's just a byproduct, JP, of getting buried as we get a look from Jordi's onboard, and that's a pretty square shot right to the front end, and it looks like engine damage. That's not what you want to see if you're Jordi Lopez, and that's likely going to relegate him to the very back of this running order.
Yeah, race very likely done. Once you lose the motor, it puts you right behind the 8 ball. Remember, 33 plus minutes to repair a full engine such as that. Very difficult for Lopez. Came in tonight in the top 15, still in the points.
He did, and he's going to bring it back to pit lane and perhaps try. I guess we'll wait and see. But right now, field under caution, and I'm impressed by the jump. Blake McCandless, we talk about restarts really being the name of the game here at Richmond. Caden Honeycutt in that Friends of Jacqueline Chris Kyle Frog Foundation number 10 nailed the opening restart, and that's going to be a key tonight.
It certainly is, and you think about Richmond, Jacob, I'm really interested to see, of course, the tail of the tape for the last couple of months here at Richmond. You even saw it in the iRacing Pro Invitational Series on Sundays, was how important it was restarting on the bottom side of the racetrack. But I think these trucks may have the potential to make that middle groove work. We'll see if these drivers are able to find that advantage on the high side, or if it's all going to be bottom feeding and trying to roll on that bottom lane, especially on these restarts when they're all stacked up double wide.
Field is starting to double up once again. Mitchell DeJong actually jumped to second on that opening lap before the caution, and that's notable only because it puts him on the outside lane. That is not necessarily where you want to be on these restarts, so it's going to put the pair of splash and go designed trucks, the 5 of Liebert and the 51 of Donovan Strauss on the bottom lane, but the big jump by the 23 of Mitchell DeJong as we go back under the green flag to start lap 6. He's actually able to clear to the bottom of the racetrack and go to second behind Caden Honeycutt, who nails the second restart of this race. He's back to the lead. The young gun from Texas out in front in turn 3.
And keep in mind, we've seen that a little bit at the first lap of this race. Drivers talked about for the eNASCAR race, they expected drivers to snap off the corner exits, be slipping and sliding. We already seen that at the start. This time, a little bit more patient off the jump, most of these trucks. Keep an eye, though, on some of those total advantage machines. They've been trying to cut hard up through the field.
That they have, as we go on board looking on from Mitchell DeJong right up to your race leader, Caden Honeycutt. And this 23, we knew him as a road course specialist at the Roval, but he has put in a lot of work, Blake McCandless, on these oval tracks to get better. It's showing right now. He's all over the back bumper of the race leader as they work down the back straightaway. DeJong wants to get out front early on.
And that's the case, Jacob. Anybody that thinks that Mitchell DeJong is just a road course ringer is sadly mistaken. It has not taken him a lot of time, if any time, if you want to say that, to get up to speed on these ovals and find a track that you have a lot of trail braking, and that plays in the guys that have the skill set that Mitchell DeJong has. So no surprise to see him up front trying to trace down the short tracker and Caden Honeycutt out front.
Well, DeJong's in the middle of a sandwich of young guns right now. He's got Honeycutt in front of him and Donovan Strauss, who we ride on board with now, right behind him, the 14-year-old out of Georgia in this JDR Graphics Toyota Tundra, as you get a look at what it's like to pilot a truck around this 3/4 mile Richmond Raceway from the view of Donovan Strauss as he wrestles it a little bit through 3 and 4, a little bit snappy on the wheel, Michael Guerrilla, but Strauss doing a solid job so far.
Yeah, it looks like on the exit he's just struggling with a little bit of that rear end loss like we were talking about earlier, but that's just a key of Richmond is having that rear grip on the exit of the corners. As you come off these corners, the banking falls away pretty quickly, and it's very noticeable as you see these rear ends start snapping out from underneath. But yeah, Caden Honeycutt's kind of starting to separate from DeJong just a little bit, whether it just be half a car length, but I mean, he just is slowly creeping away as DeJong sends it in and gets all that gap closed back up.
Looking a little bit further back in the field, I'm zeroing in on one of the storyline drivers in this race who's trying to work his way forward. Started 23rd up to 20th right now, but the one of Garrett Maines. This is the debut race for Sadler Esports, as Maines has had a little bit of a team swap recently. And of course, JP, he's one of the notable names in this field trying to race his way into the Pro Series. So a little bit of a change of scenery right at the halfway point, but it doesn't seem to have slowed him down. He's trying to knife his way through the field here early.
Yes, indeed. Of course, remember, is a Richmond Raceway Esports development driver along with Roger Carruth entering tonight's race. But also with that team change, brought on sponsorship from Smithfield on that #1 truck. It's been a lot of bad luck in a lot of races for Garrett Maines, and at this point, Garrett, I think, is just hoping that change of scenery absolutely helps him bring some positivity to be able to get going. Looking very quick on the short run. He's already up +4, looking to make it +5.
He's trying to jump his way forward as he works to the inside of Trayton Lapsovich, takes a spot from the young Canadian. Maines has latched onto the back bumper of the 40 of Carson Hocevar, and Maines and Hocevar both jumping their way forward now, up inside the top 20, and Hocevar's another one who has plenty of short track experience, not afraid to get aggressive, and Blake McCandless, he'd like to get back to victory lane in the sim world after recently picking up his first real-life ARCA CRA Super Late Model victory at Lebanon I-44 Speedway, but a couple of weeks ago.
Well, certainly getting it done in real life and also doing a solid job in this series as well. Obviously above the top 20 threshold, if you will, to qualify for the Pro Series, as he currently sits 14th in the point standing. So you mentioned his success in real life, obviously carrying over into the sim and looking to keep marching forward with what these guys started with all the way back in March.
He is trying to march his way forward in race right now, and another driver marching his way forward. JP, we talked a little bit about the total advantage drivers at the very top, and two of them have moved up close to or now inside the top 5. Steven Wilson is carving the holes, and Femi Olot is driving forward as Wilson makes the lane. Wilson just took a spot away and has moved inside the top 6 past Will Norton. Olot back there challenging for the 7th spot now, and these drivers under the direction of Landon Huffman, you know, we saw Wilson get the big win a couple of races ago. He is one that has really come to life. This whole team has come to life in this top split over the past couple of races.
They've looked really, really good in these past few races, absolutely, as a whole unit. And mind you, too, on each of the starts in this race so far, the most aggressive trucks were those total advantage machines. I think they feel like they have pace. It's just, again, trying to get track position to catch up to these 3, since they've already ran away by nearly 2 seconds as a unit.
They have. It's interesting to see the top 3, Caden Honeycutt, Mitchell DeJong, Donovan Strauss. They have, as Justin Prince said, absolutely jumped ship and ran from 4th place Jarrett Liebert. As it sits, that 5 truck back there of Liebert has not been able to move forward at all, and I would almost argue Michael Guerrilla may be holding up Adam Gilliland, Steven Wilson, and the like a little bit.
Yeah, it looks as though he's just starting to struggle on those tires, especially he looks like he's just sliding up in the middle of the corner, leaving a little bit of exit speed left in the center of the corner, so that's allowing for Gillen to get on this bumper. But it's just the struggle of trying to manage those front tires, especially under braking. You just see him get up just the track just a little bit right there, leaving that bottom bumper for Gillen. Let's see if he makes a move right here down the turn when he's peeking down the inside of Jarrett. And there goes Gilliland down the inside. They're side by side into turn 1, but that's just one of the products of Richmond. You just miss that bottom just a little bit, you're going to plow off the corner, and that's going to allow that guy behind you to get underneath you, as you see Gilliland still making the move right here into turn 3.
Little bit of contact, I think, with that 5 of Liebert, and we mentioned I thought he was holding them up. Those 3 got by and I think are quickly going to leave. Briar LaPrat is back there in 8th, going to be the next target that's drawing a bead on the 5 of Liebert. But to go back to Garrett Maines, who's now up to the 18th position for a minute, Justin Prince, it is important to note, and I feel bad that I didn't note right off the gun, Garrett has been a long-time Legend Car competitor at the Bojangles Summer Shootout at Charlotte Motor Speedway. In fact, anybody that knows Garrett knows Tuesday nights during June and July are race nights. He was, in fact, on the quarter mile at Charlotte about 2 hours ago, finished on the podium in 3rd, just behind Carson Ferguson, who picked up the win. And now Garrett is back at the hotel in North Carolina, racing on the sim rig that he brought from Virginia. Hello.
That is absolutely spectacular to hear. All that, of course, has had a lot of success, mind you, in the summer shootouts you talked about. And it takes a lot of work, mind you, to bring your whole entire rig like that to a hotel, mind you, and making sure it works technically and works internet-wise, mind you, to make sure you're able to run properly on the racetrack, make sure you're able to have your inputs correctly, make sure you don't have technical issues. So it takes a lot of work in that situation to make sure that all of that is stable from a hotel like that.
It is, and I was going to joke that if our producer Ryan Bauer had a microphone, he would probably make some sort of a point that it's difficult to find decent hotel internets, and of course in our chat, that is exactly what he pointed out momentarily. So we'll monitor the progress of Garrett Maines in that Smithfield number 1 as we march through. Just ahead of him is the driver I tried to mention a minute ago, Carson Hocevar. My mind was on Carson Ferguson, and my eyes were on Carson Hocevar, and got myself twisted up there. But Hocevar on lap 28 of 200, because that's how quickly we're flying through this race, up now almost to the top 15. Derek Justice is the next driver ahead of Hocevar, as Maines now locked in a battle for position and may give one up to Daniel Roper here in the 6th. Roper has charged his way from 29th up to 18th as we approach lap 30. If you're wondering, have I missed anything at the front, You have not. Caden Honeycutt has led from the pole since the drop of the green flag so far. He is still being chased by the 23 of Mitchell DeJong. They're separated by about a truck length. Donovan Strauss starting to fall back a little bit in that third position, and then it's a long 2 seconds back to Adam Gilliland in the 81, who rides fourth. Stephen Wilson, Femi Olot, Jarrett Liebert, Cody Bias, Andrew Freenage, and Briar LaPrade, the rest of the top 10, as we now cross lap 30, and a little pressure from the back of Adam Gilliland. Stephen Wilson in one of the total advantage entries took a peek, Blake McCandless, but nothing doing there as the Gary Mercer Chevrolet Silverado washes up, and maybe now is the opportunity that Wilson's looking for headed to one.
Certainly is. Wilson will dive into the bottom side of the racetrack, and of course Gilliland doing all he can to make it as difficult as possible, but it just looks like that 5 rolling through the center of the corner right now, and he's going to lose a couple of positions now, as now Femi Olot also going to be able to take advantage. So the pair of total advantage cars up, moving into the top 5, and looking like they want to try to chase down our race leaders. However, they're losing a little bit of time battling side by side like that as DeJong continues to close in on Honeycutt.
Trying to close and making the pass are two different things, though. So Caden Honeycutt remains out front for 33 laps so far, as perhaps the total advantage teammates are going to have a decision who's going to run fourth and try to run down this 3-car breakaway out in front. Femi Olot does not look content in that 21 to run fifth right now. He's trying to close. Stephen Wilson playing defense, and we'll see if they can't work together to try and make some time, make some laps, and work forward. But at least so far, Michael Guerrilla, I'm almost hesitant to say it, but it's been clean to this point, save for the opening lap incident, which is good news.
Yeah, the field's pretty strung out right now, except for a few side-by-side battles, but for the most part, everyone's been pretty kind to each other, letting people go by if they're slower than somebody else. But yeah, it's been pretty safe so far throughout these guys. I mean, it's a long race. We're still in lap 36 of 200 right now as we're going off into turn 2 right now with our leaders. But yeah, it's just a lot of patience right now. You're just kind of just settling in right now, seeing who's quicker. One guy that I'm watching is Daniel Roper. Right? We talked about him just a few minutes ago, but his lap times the past few laps have been quicker than anybody else on the track, and he's been making that climb from his qualifying effort after he hit the wall back in 29th. So he's now up in the 16th side by side with Will Norton, but that 6 machine is definitely on the move.
He is on the move. He has said that there are tracks he's not the best qualifier out, but he will race well, and he has proven that so far. The High Performance Motorsports Autism Awareness entry working its way forward and looking back off the 6 to the number 1 Smithfield Tundra of Garrett Maines, who is trying to follow Roper through, pick up a couple more positions. That's Will Norton back there, who just got bypassed by Daniel Roper, who takes a spot and moves into 15th on lap number 38. As we've pretty much settled it out for now. Another driver, much like Roper, who's picked his way through slowly and methodically, JP. Derek Justice has done a pretty impressive job, at least to this point. Sits 13th for the driver who picked up a bit of a surprise victory towards the beginning of the first half of this Road to Pro season. But the Baskin-Robbins Toyota sitting solidly and closing on the top dozen at the same time.
He's actually been one of the quickest trucks on the track when you calculate his average past 20 laps on the circuit. He's slowly coming through this field. Mind you, +8 from the drop of the green flag as well, just in front of some of the grouping of some of the biggest overall movers, mind you, including Roper. But as well, here's something to think about as well. The fall off already fairly massive, 1.2 seconds, and he's cutting his way through the field as well, despite the fact that truck is dealing with right front damage. It isn't as effective, the damages here for these trucks at the short tracks, but that's still going to hurt him just a touch bit on corner exit.
So 40 laps in now, officially 20% of this race concluded, as Derek Justice looks to the inside of Michael Fenlison for position. That will move him up a spot into position number 12 as they cross the stripe to put 41 laps on the board. Zach Nichols back there going to try to track down the 14 of Fenlison, and just as quickly as we weren't talking about him, Daniel Roper has caught this battle, so Roper may be on the fringes of the top 10 before we know it in that 6 truck. All the while, however, Caden Honeycutt remains the man to beat. 42 laps complete. He's led them all over Mitchell DeJong, Donovan Strauss, Femi Olot, and Steven Wilson. You won't miss a thing. We're going to step aside briefly and we'll return with more action from Richmond Raceway. Actually, we'll stay with it for a moment because we got a battle for the lead off turn 4 as we complete lap number 43. Mitchell DeJong finally got to the inside and we're racing for the lead in turn 1. Blake McCandless, DeJong found an opening and he's trying to put that 23 all the way through it.
Well, and Honeycutt going to make his life as difficult as possible, but right now I just think DeJong may have saved his tires just enough off of turn 4. New leader at the stripe, lap 45. Give it to Mitchell DeJong, and oh, don't forget about Donovan Strauss, who's now crept up to this battle.
Donovan Strauss has crept up to it, so almost at quarter distance before we had our first lead change of the night. 44 laps it took for Mitchell DeJong to work his way by Caden Honeycutt and take over the race lead, but it's the VRS Toyota Tundra now out in front as we put 45 laps up on the board. So they'll settle that out briefly, and now we'll try to do what I was doing before they got side by side for the race lead. Step aside briefly, but you won't miss a thing. We'll be back with more of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro live on Podium Esports right after this.
Sorry. Thank you for noticing that.
Welcome back to the virtual Richmond Raceway, where we reach the halfway point of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro. It's round 7 of 14 here tonight on the 3/4 mile in the Commonwealth. Jacob Seelman alongside Justin Prince and Blake McCandless, with Michael Guerrilli, our driver analyst in the broadcast booth, and Ryan Bauer punching buttons down in the production trailer. It took 44 laps before we had our first lead change of the night. Mitchell DeJong now out in front over Caden Honeycutt by about 0.4 of a second. Donovan Strauss rides in the 3rd position with Femi Olot 4th, and Andrew Freenage is up to the top 5 as Freenage is starting to move forward. Justin Prince, he has very, very quietly found a space in the top 5 and almost unnoticed put himself into position here.
For those who follow him in various different series he competes in, including RSR competition, Race Spot TV, and various other different series, he's known for his ability to save tires and be the quickest driver on a long run each and every time and pull away as much by 10-15 seconds in the cup cars. I think he's showing those muscles here in the trucks now, because for the past 4 laps he has been the only truck in the 23-3s in the entire field. The leaders, they're 0.2 of a second slower this time by, though he got topped by Cody Bice just a couple truck lengths behind him.
Yeah, Freenage is chasing down the front 4 in a relative hurry, and Freenage is in the top 5. Actually came Blake McCandless at the expense of Steven Wilson. I told you that the 2 total advantage trucks couldn't decide which one was going to run in that 4th spot, and eventually Femi Olot finally said, "Hey, I'm going to take that, thanks, if you're going to be here and I'm going to be quicker." Femi Olot's actually driven up to the back of Donovan Strauss, and we're about to have a battle for the 3rd spot.
Well, I think we're starting to see which trucks were really prepared for that long run, as we'll get probably, I would imagine, about 13 or 14 more laps that these drivers will put on this long run, assuming that we'll stay green flag right here. But right now, the total advantage trucks, along with some of the low line machines, obviously Freenage directly behind them, running pretty much identical lap times to Femi Olat, Steven Wilson, a couple of those drivers right now. So it looks like low line and total advantage, they have brought some really good long run speed, as a lot of those trucks have made their way forward.
They have. Donovan Strauss has now fallen a whole second off the race lead. Mitchell DeJong's actually pulled out 0.7 of a second and change over Caden Honeycutt. So Honeycutt's found a comfortable spot in second for now. He may not be comfortable for much longer, though, Michael Guerrilla, because not only do you have the 21 of Femi Olat pressuring you down, who's barely run them down from 2 seconds back, but we're approaching in about 10 laps or so green flag pit stops.
Yeah, you mentioned the pressure is mounting for Honeycutt, but yeah, pit stop could be in effect here in the next few laps, so don't be surprised if Honeycutt's one of those first few to short pit with the way that Strauss and Olat are running them down. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to get ahead of them, short pit them by a lap or two, and then try to pull out that gap and stay ahead of them throughout the cycle as you guys see them moving in. So just looking at lap times as well, it just looks as though they're just roughly starting to even out a little bit more as we go through this run. Everyone in the top 5 running about a low to mid 6 for the most part, 23.6 second lap time. So it looks like that fall off is still kicking in, but it's about to drop off.
Michael, from a driver's standpoint, we talk about certain pit roads on the service and really in real life being very difficult to master, as we see Olat finally make the pass on Donovan Strauss. He'll bring Freenage with him, so that'll drop Strauss back 5th and move Olat and Freenage to 3rd and 4th, respectively. But as we start talking about green flag pit stops, we talk about certain pit roads on the service being more difficult to master and more difficult to deal with, especially under green, than others. Where do you rank Richmond on that scale?
For me, I think Richmond's one of the more difficult ones. It may not seem as much because when you get into the braking zone into turn 3, that's usually your marker to hit pit road, but it's really difficult to roll that car down from 100 miles an hour down to 40 by the middle of the corner. If you send it in just a little too deep, it's very easy to go past the pit road or even hit the pit road wall. So it's really crucial to slow it down, but if you just overshoot it just that little bit, there's a good chance you're going to miss it. So it's really crucial to slow it down and make sure you got no one behind you going to be on your bumper.
Brief onboard look with the number 13 Toyota Tundra of Cody Bias, looking ahead at the 51 of Donovan Strauss, who has really started to fade at the end of this long run. Strauss was really strong to start, but has begun to fade a little bit. The Napa number 13 Toyota of Bias closing in at lap 61.
Yeah, and Bias again is now starting to show his long run pace. I think right now we're starting to see those drivers who were able to save their tires the best and who set up their trucks for past 20 laps start to rise to the top. We mentioned Andrew Freenage, for example. We're seeing it now with Bias, who is a former eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series competitor. The pace is picking up for them, and the fall-off has evened out now to about 1.6 seconds for much of the field. For some of the other drivers still in that lead pack, mind you, including Honeycutt, they've fallen an extra couple tenths. Still, though, things getting pretty dicey at this point, though, you have to say there. And I think, Blake, with battles such as this, where Garrett Maines is trying to hold off this group in the trucks, for example, it could get very fierce here, Blake.
Yes, it could, and Maine's trying to hold off those drivers as we saw a battle start to commence for that second position up front. Femi Olat continuing his march all the way to the front of the field as Caden Honeycutt, our pole sitter, starting to fall back into his clutches as he gets almost into the outside retaining wall off of turn number 2. Femi Olat looking for position number 2. He's going to drag Freenage with him through to the bottom side, move Olat to second, and Honeycutt may be in jeopardy here of falling all the way back into 4th. He's going to surrender 3rd, and how about a total advantage and low line, just like we were talking about a couple moments ago, showcasing that long run speed just before we may see a couple of cars make their way onto pit road. They find themselves up into on the podium.
They may. Honeycutt really starting to fade at the tail end of this run. He and Strauss both, Justin, looked like they were set up good for the first 20 or 30 laps, but as this run has really worn on, those two trucks have faded pretty mightily, and we're seeing the guys in Olan and Freenage, who have built a lot of long run speed in, really come to the front.
I think it's really telling what the low-line drivers have based on what we've seen with Freenage especially. Remember, him and Dylan C. Jones went over from Aegis, which is a fixed series team, and went over to low-line for Road to Pro competition. Compare that to Dylan C. Jones. He's also been starting to run in the same ballpark of lap times compared to Freenage when he's been open space. So whatever low-line's done, those trucks, they're now set up for this moment right now. We're already approaching lap 70 of this race.
We are, which means we should be just a couple of laps away from Michael Guerrilla, as you mentioned. Green flag stops, and we probably see that push a few laps longer than the typical 66, 67, only because we had those caution laps at the start. But I'm prepared for it to be in the next, 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, roughly I'd say so. The better strategy in my mind would be the 67 because you get the advantage of those fresh tires. Sure, you do have to have that extra stop than the 100-lap run, but the advantage on the tires just is so much more worth it than just trying to stay out there on those old tires in a safer track position. Don't be surprised if you see a few guys towards the back try and do it, whether it be Casey Tucker or you mentioned Dylan T. Jones, who is starting to find that long-run pace in the low-line truck. But yeah, as we're working lap 70 right now, still no one yet to pit, so I'm a little bit shocked by that. So we'll have to see who is the first to dive it on down.
We are waiting to see who will be the first among the leaders to bail out for green flag pit stops. It's Mitchell DeJong out front, Femi Olot, Andrew Freenage, Cody Bias, Caden Honeycutt, the top 5. Donovan Strauss has faded to 6th. Stephen Wilson is 7th. Jarrett Liebert 8th. Briar LaPrade 9th. And Alan Bowes in 10th. Derek Justice has climbed his way from 21st now up to knocking on the door of the top 10 in 11th place. So we're talking about comers and goers, and that seems to be whenever we get these green flag races with long runs to them, Justin, that's what we talk about often is comers and goers and the drivers who are better on the short run versus who are better on the long run. And that's one of the things that I think makes a Richmond race like this one particularly enjoyable.
Many of these teams, mind you, had at minimum several dozen 60-plus lap runs. They built their truck based on how the fall-off would go around this point of the race. And guess what? It's gone long, meaning whoever's been able to build for those long runs and built, say, a 60-lap run with a full fuel stint, for example, they're the ones that are benefiting from this. The drivers who may have went for a short-run truck or something expecting caution precautions, they've been slipping and sliding back through the field. Adam Gilliland, now a -13 is your biggest fall, along with Will Norden. They both, mind you, were inside the top 10 at the start of this race.
They were, and they have mightily fallen as we've gone through. I'm surprised at Adam Gilliland. I expected him to hang up there a lot longer than he has, but he's almost outside the top 20 now, and that's not what you want to see. Most of the guys who have started up front, at least in the top first 4 rows, have been able to maintain their track position, but Gilliland among those who has not.
Yes, Gilliland has definitely struggled here, and of course this is where you see where all those hours that all these teams put into these testing sessions comes in so clutch and so key. As you see, he continues to fade right here in a battle right now for that 20th position, as it looks like Carson Hocevar as well as Brian Mercurio, who had a little bit of damage after getting into the outside wall just a little bit ago. They're all trying to take advantage as that 81 truck is reeling right now, and obviously you have to start to think, Jacob, about what ways you can try and counter this. If you're losing this much speed over the long run, and it may be a while before we see the yellow flag wave, how are you going to stay on the lead lap? And what potential strategy could you pull off if you think you may not be keeping up too well?
I think the bigger question I have for Michael Guerrilla right now is, considering it's almost 80 laps and we've seen no one pit as of yet, is there any way they can make it all the way to halfway and only do this on one stop?
It definitely is possible, but I don't see the advantage in doing that. As you see now, Will Norton has now made his way onto pit road. He's the first driver to come to pit road in this cycle, so we'll see if he brings anyone down. He was currently back in the mid-20s, so we'll see how much of an advantage these tires are. He'll be our gauge for who comes to pit road and who doesn't, who tries to stay out for this 100-lap run. But I think the advantage will be there for a few laps. We'll have to see how short the long run falls off for Will Norton.
Trayton Lapsevich has made his way to pit road. I believe it is now feeding time at the zoo. Justin Prince, game on.
And that's going to be the question now of how many lead drivers elect to pit during green flag situations, because I think this is the reason for the hesitancy when it comes to the short run, as the battle for P3 starts to really hit up with Andrew Freenosh and company. That's where Will Norton just broke that up now and just lost a spot to Cody Bias, for example. When do you come down? If you come down and a caution comes out while your lap's down, that's going to mean you lose all your track position. I think that's part of the hesitancy of why we haven't seen that many pit stops yet outside of Norton and Lapsevich.
I think the biggest thing here, Guerrilla, I'll go back to you on this. I think Mitchell DeJong is actually forcing a lot of people's hands because he was able to drive away to such a big lead over most of the field early. It's not really an advantage among the top 10 to pit now because, as Justin mentioned, you stay out, you get a caution, your trap laps down. It's only guys so far who have been, half a lap or more back that have pitted, and you're not going to make up half a lap on the racetrack, even if you do a two-stop strategy and have fresh tires.
Yeah, it's really difficult to make up half lap around here, especially with the limited fall off. We do say that it's drastic, but it's roughly about a second and a half, and the tires just won't do it if you do fall down that lap. So we also had LaPrade in the 12 machine come down to pit road, and he fires off now. So looking back at Will Norton's lap times, he ran at 22:4:39 that last time by, compared to DeJong's 23:8:39. So I mean, it's about roughly a second and a half advantage. So we'll have to see how much of an advantage that will be, and see how these guys who are staying out the long run, if they can hold on for another 15 or so laps. As you see, Femiola is starting to fall off just a little bit as he lost another spot there to Drew Freenage.
Yeah, Femi Olot, I think, has run all the good out of his virtual year racing Eagles. He is second. He has fallen back to fourth. And Blake McCandless, I cannot help but be impressed after all the bad luck he's had so far. The Napa Auto Care Toyota for Cody Bias running second right now and running lap times faster than the race leader. Last time we saw him, Cody was ready to throw in the towel. Tonight, he looks like a driver who could go up and win this race in the second half.
It certainly looks that way, as, again, I don't think these drivers really would have planned out for this many laps to be run under a green flag run. Of course, you think about Richmond and some of the chaos that could ensue, and the teams that took that into account, as you'll see Trayton Lapsevich. That is the difference on new tires, as we were talking about a little bit earlier. The fall off not incredibly drastic, but you can see just in a very short while that Lapsevich not only unlapped himself past Cody Bias, he'll go by the race leader in Mitchell DeJong as well, and he's making up, call it about a second, 1.2 seconds on the leader. He's still one lap down. He unlapped himself from 2 laps down just a moment ago. But that just goes to show you how much these tires will matter. And some of these drivers in the back of the field that haven't made their way down pit road yet, you could imagine that they may be in just to try and get that track position back and maybe catch a yellow flag.
I think that's the question. And, I talked about the possibility of Mitchell DeJong basically forcing everybody's hand and turning this from a 2-stop race into a 1-stop race. And I like the plan and think it might work, Justin, except for the fact that Cody Bias has done such a job of saving his tires, that Bias may end up being the new leader by the time we get to halfway.
Take a look at this, though. Caden Honeycutt just over the radio indicated he's pitting. He's now into the lane. Mind you, they can make it on the fuel, Jacob, from this point on just this one stop. I think this is where the reason some drivers may have hesitated and waited to this point as well here. But here's the tricky part again. Eventually, you're going to sacrifice the time back you gain by being on the undercut strategy. And if it stays green flag racing like it has been here at Richmond, I don't know if he's going to be able to hold on and defend.
He may not be able to if you're Honeycutt, but you got to try something different. Otherwise, you're just going to run in the tire tracks of the leader all night long. Guerrilla would tell you, as a driver, sometimes you just have to be the contrarian. Battle for the race lead as they cross the stripe at start lap 91, and it is going to be short-lived. Cody Bias ran down Mitchell DeJong, passed him like he was tied to a post, and DeJong now is back to second off turn 2. The Napa Auto Care Toyota Tundra, Cody Bias to the race lead for the first time on lap 91. He becomes the third different leader of this race. Blake McCandless, and for Bias, after so much bad luck, even leading this race has to feel like a win.
It certainly does, and I think the biggest thing that these drivers will look forward to is, again, I think it'll be these next 10 laps or so. You see the majority of the field come down pit road. Bias is really on his own right now. He doesn't have to perhaps get out of the way and scrub some time being behind DeJong, who may come down pit road. So right now, Bias, clean air on his nose, and doesn't really have to worry about that green flag pit road entrance, which, of course, if we're only going to get one here, if these guys are going to split it halfway, it could be the difference between winning or losing tonight.
It could, and spin, it's the 20 right in front of the leaders, and a caution flag will wave. That was almost disastrous. One truck sideways in turn 4 right in front of the race leaders, and that is going to take green flag pit stops out of the equation, and it will bury names like LaPrade, Honeycutt, Lapsevich, Jake Matheson, Adam Gilliland had pitted. As we get a look at the replay, and it's good for everybody who had not yet pitted, bad for everyone who had, as Bias leads the field to pit road. And that was not just a spin, that was there was some help involved there, Justin Prince.
About a lap or so ago, he had indicated over the radio he wanted to pit. Here was the problem. He was stuck on that top line and tried to dive down as quick as he could to the bottom. There was not enough time for anybody, mind you, behind him even react for a pit call like that. Adam Gillen, I don't think, realized he was going to come down that specific time, since the call came out 2 to 3 laps prior to that. And now, everybody who pit, they're going to be forced to take a wave run and hope for an air quick caution. Everybody else, they're breathing a sigh of relief that they didn't elect to take a pit stop during the green flag run.
Oh, and by the way, prime pit position off pit road is going to allow the 23 to take the lead back. Mitchell DeJong back to the point over Cody Bias. So all that work Bias did of running DeJong down and passing him, a 14.54 on the lane for Mitchell DeJong, good enough to put him out in front over a 14.91. So almost 0.4 of a second difference. But who I was really impressed with and made up all the time on pit road was Femi Olot, who had a 14.23 on pit road. Fastest stop we saw among the front runners, just not quite fast enough, Blake, to get him out in the number 1 position. But Femi Olot, a nice job to put himself up in contention now for this restart.
Well, and Olot finally has that track position. Again, it is so hard as someone who did it once or twice early in this Road to Pro season. If you don't have that track position, it is very hard with all these competitive trucks out here to make up that track position and get out front. Olot started that last run in 8th, which doesn't sound like a lot with some of the drivers we've seen been able to make their way through the field, but it definitely takes its toll and slows you down overall. So Olot, yes, he's not up front, I'm sure, where he'd like to be, Jacob, but I can guarantee that being up there in 3rd is going to be really good for that total advantage machine that we've seen after about really 60 laps or so really comes into its own before it kind of fades around lap 70 or 80, at least during that first run. Now we have the, I guess, advantage of knowing where everybody runs, and of course, I think a lot of these drivers that you saw fade a little bit later, Jacob, are going to be a lot more cognizant of running their tires a little bit less hard over this next run.
But when you talk about drivers, Michael Guerrilla, like a Caden Honeycutt or a Donovan Strauss, who we saw fade pretty heavily at the end of that first run, Honeycutt was one that led for a lot of the opening stint. It's hard to gauge how much you have to save when you're the race leader, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, especially in our case in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola Series, being the leader is sort of at a disadvantage because you're out front, you're setting the pace, so you're dictating how fast you have to run the tires, how hard you run them, what you do, and how you run your race. So I mean, for the most part, it's a little bit of a disadvantage for the meantime. But I mean, if you have a way quicker truck than everybody else, you're easily being able to control the pace and run your race. But in the case of those who have short run setups, as we saw with Honeycutt especially, it's just hard to manage and know how quick you need to go.
Setting up for the restart. I know Caden Honeycutt was among those on the radio, very disappointed at the caution coming out. He's going to have a lot of work to do and maybe need a little luck second half of this race. Green flag back in the air. Starting lap 99, so basically the halfway point, 102 laps to go. Field settles out among the top 2 or 3. Bias settles into second. First battle on the racetrack for fourth between Andrew Freenage and Donovan Strauss. They're wheel-to-wheel in turn 3.
They're really trying to shuffle, though, to protect that yellow line. Mind you, how you take these corner entries is so important here at Richmond. There are 2 different ways you can do it. Flatter entry burns up a bit more of the tires. Try and go push up a touch on corner apex, time in the corner on exit. Others like to arc it on down, get right to the yellow line on apex, then run off the corner. We're seeing a little bit of a mixture of both so far throughout this race, especially on these short runs. Now is the question again, who can save the tires the best? 100 laps to go from Richmond.
Halfway that time by, it's Mitchell DeJong leading Cody Bias, Femi Olot, Donovan Strauss, and Andrew Freenage. The front 5, a shout out to Casey Tucker, climbed from last on the grid, 34th up to 11th as we cross the halfway point. And as we do so, it's time to bring you the iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. iRacing is home to a wide variety of officially sanctioned series with racing from the Australian Supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the Cars Tour here on Podium Esports, the World of Outlaws, and much more. The iRacing full field rundown looks like this at the top. It's Mitchell DeJong leading in the VRS number 23 over Cody Bias. Femi Olot rides 3rd for total advantage. Donovan Strauss is 4th, and Andrew Freenage is 5th. Derek Justice sits in the 6th position right now. Stephen Wilson is 7th. Alan Bowes up to 8th. Garrett Maines has cracked the top 10 after pit stops. He rides 9th, and Jarrett Liebert is 10th. Justin Prince.
Positions currently shuffling a little bit, but 11th is now Zach Nichols, up from 16th this starting position. Set the Merchant up to 12th after just making a pass on Casey Tucker. Danny Roper is in 14th position. That's where he's been much of the night, with Carson Hocevar in 15th. Ben Lisson is in P16. Brian Blackford quietly is in 17th. Dylan C. Jones got shuffled up the track a couple laps ago, and he's in 18th position. Stuck in a side-by-side. Ryan Kuhn just leapfrogged a couple positions in that grouping up to 18th to pass by Jones. Thomas Axum is in that rusted and silver car on the top line. Last time by, scored in 20th leg.
Briar LaPrade, the new entry to Burton Clickerman Esports on Twitch, is in 21st. 22nd is Brian Mercurio. 23rd after sitting on the pole and leading a majority of the laps here tonight. Caden Honeycutt is back in the 23rd spot. 24th is Jake Matheson. 25th, Derek Bordeaux. 26th is Braden Buyos. 27th is Adam Gilliland on the tail end of the lead lap. But many of those cars we just mentioned took the wave around. 28th is Will Norton. 29th is Traden Lapsovich. 30th is Brandon McKissick. 31st is Dylan Rafferty. 32nd, Jacob Hall. And then the 2 cars already behind the wall in this one, Blake Neer and Jordy Lopez, scored 48 and 102 laps down, respectively.
That's a look at your iRacing full field rundown during tonight's Midway Race Break. And with more than 170,000 drivers on the service and more than 80 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is the original esports racing game. For more information, visit iRacing.com today. 107 laps on the board, working 108 as we see Cody Bias starting to fall back a little bit. He lost the runner-up spot to Femi Olot the last time by, and Donovan Strauss challenging on the outside for position number 3. Surprised to see the outside lane work, but Bias almost kicks the tail into the left front of Donovan Strauss, so Bias will hold on to 3rd, and up the inside, Freenage took a look, and they'll settle back single file for now. So past halfway, 91 laps to go. It's Mitchell DeJong out front. From Richmond Raceway, this is Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro. We'll step aside and be back right after this.
You have a link.
Welcome back to the virtual Richmond Raceway and coverage of the top split of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro live on Podium Esports. Jacob Seelman joined by Justin Prince, Blake McCandless, Michael Guerrilla in the broadcast booth with Ryan Bauer down in the production trailer as we are into the second half of the 7th round of Road to Pro, and after tonight we'll be halfway through the season, which stretches into late September and will end at Phoenix Raceway. Sitting on 114 laps, Mitchell DeJong has led the lion's share of them tonight after the Caden Honeycutt machine led for the first 44 or so. DeJong took over, and other than a very brief stint out in front by Cody Bias, DeJong has pretty much led from that lap 44 pass for the race lead. Femi Olot, Bias, Donovan Strauss, and Andrew Freenage sit 2nd through 5th right now. And this again, Justin Prince, feels like a green flag run where we've stretched it out single file and everybody's just kind of saving, waiting, and seeing what everybody else around them is going to do.
And to be quite frank, this is nearly exactly the opposite, I think, as some drivers and even some of us thought this race was going to flow tonight, especially with what happened with the eNASCAR race here at Richmond with the several dozen caution flags. But tonight's been very clean. Everyone's been able to give each other some space. There have been a little bumps and bangs here and there with some of the passes, but outside of that, everyone's given each other space when they feel like they're falling off. They've given room to their fellow competitors, and in turn, whoever is, again, most comfortable with the long run and as the rubber builds up on the racetrack, the better those drivers have been tonight. Bias, one of those members. Andrew Freenage, we've talked about a couple times, still inside the top 5, mind you, as well. A couple others also slowly but surely looking to join them here if this run continues.
I know we're working through 200 laps at Richmond right now, but something big we should point out, JP, is Thursday night, about 48 hours from now, we'll be working through 400 laps on Podium Esports as one of the big events for the Podium Esports crew this season, taking place at the virtual North Wilkesboro Speedway for the 1987 Cup cars on Thursday night. It's the first in-flight 400, a nod to the old Tyson Holly Farms 400 for the NASCAR Cup Series. That'll take place right here on Podium Esports at 7 p.m. Eastern Thursday night, one that I'm very much looking forward to.
There's definitely a lot of excitement when it comes to that race. Absolutely some big names. Even our own Blake McCandless set to take to the racetrack at North Wilkesboro. No, James Pike absolutely was over the moon, mind you, when that track made its debut on the service a couple weeks ago, as ran several hundred races at this point, give or take. He's really excited. I think all of us are excited here at Podium to see how that race goes and see who can come out on top in the 1987 cars. It's going to be an absolute show.
In fairness, Blake, I've not seen your scheme yet, so I'm looking forward to it when James and I jump in the broadcast booth on Thursday night. Going to be a whole lot of fun. I think we're waiting for the fun really get going here. This smells like a whole lot of veteran patience at the front of the field, especially when it comes to DeJong, Olot, Bias, and Freenage, 4 of the top 5 right now. Kind of old hat at this.
It certainly is. And well, you know what? One driver that I think really just deserves a lot of credit, not just for tonight, but throughout the season right now, is Donovan Strauss. And we've seen this kid, and again, I emphasize with his age, he does not drive like his age. He is very mature beyond his years. And despite the fact you see his teammate Seth the Merchant all the way back in the 13th spot, it seems like no matter what speed you put in this JDR Graphics Toyota, Donovan Strauss is going to find a way to get a good finish out of it. And there's really no other reason, Jacob, that he is well over 400 points above the cut line to make the Pro Series right now. Would not be surprised if obviously we'll see him in Pro, and perhaps he'll be joining you, Michael, in the Coca-Cola Series next season.
Yeah, I mean, Donovan's a really fast kid. I mean, we saw him in the Landing Castle Challenge. He finished top 5 in that. I mean, he's obviously been impressing us. He's been up there in the points in RTP as well, as you see him running 5th here as we're working lap 125 right now. But yeah, he's well beyond his years in racing, and I'm excited to see what he does throughout the rest of the Road to Pro season and maybe even into Pro.
So as we continue to monitor the battles up in front, potential trouble for the championship leader in Zach Nichols, who we're checking on it, but may Justin Prince have lost connection to this server, and that would be disastrous for a driver who really has not had any major issues all season long. His consistency got him to the top of the standings, and now, unfortunately, he finds himself 2 laps down, potentially out of commission for the remainder of this event.
Still off the track at the moment as well. Absolutely. You mentioned consistency. That got him up to the front. Yes, just 1 lap led on the season so far for Nichols. However, the 3rd best top finishing average in the entire series, who had made every single start so far in 2020. Only 2 hours were better than him. One of the drivers inside the top 20 in points, as well as one of the drivers that are in the lower splits. This is disastrous if this is the situation for Nichols. Getting the official confirmation, yes, indeed, gone from server. Unfortunate for him. Might have to use his 1 drop here.
And that's fortunate that he has the drop to be able to fall back on. So we will continue to monitor that story as this race comes to its conclusion in about 72 laps, as well as into subsequent weeks. What I'm monitoring right now, Blake, is a potential battle for the race lead brewing. Femi Olot has started to run down Mitchell de Jong just a little bit. It is not imminent, perhaps, but Olot not letting that 23 get away, and they've been near mirror images, try saying that 5 times fast, on the stopwatch the last 2 or 3 laps. So right in the tire tracks is Femi Olot as he chases the race lead.
Well, and we saw kind of the first signs of weakness from de Jong just a couple of laps ago. It was actually he and Cody Bias, as we came back from break, that had a moment on the front straightaway. And you may think that this front straightaway is pretty simple, but I have seen time and time again here on the iRacing service that front straightaway here at Richmond, with how you're sliding off of the corner, it's not too uncommon to see some drivers get up into the wall right beneath the flag stand here at Richmond Raceway. That's exactly what de Jong did. A little bit of rear damage on that 23 machine, although it certainly hasn't slowed up his VRS Toyota. But no doubt about it, Olot is right in that groove. It seems to be this is the part of the run where that setup comes alive. But we're going to have to put that on hold as there's trouble on the front straightaway. It is Traden Lapsevich that is around here after, what are we just talking about? Lose it off of 4, almost got into the outside wall. He does a nice little Clint Boyer spin here on the front straightaway and brings out the yellow.
So caution flag waves at lap 132. That will give us 68 laps to go. Lapsevich may have tagged the outside wall just a little bit as well in that butt kicker chrome number 32 Toyota Tundra. So he goes for a slide down into the grass. Yellow flag waves. Michael Guerrilla, if you're the front runners, do you pit here? Is tire wear enough that you have to pit here? I think the answer we're seeing is yes, but I'm curious, does anybody play the card to stay out?
Nobody should be playing the card to stay out. We've already been out here for 30 laps, and the fall-off has already been over, coming up on a second already, so I doubt that anyone stays out except for, let's see, does anyone stay out? We might have a few. Let's take a look here. No, nobody as of right now. But yeah, I expect everyone to come down for feel goods right now.
Leaders hit pit road. Mitchell DeYoung, pretty solid and smooth entry. Caden Honeycutt now, unfortunately, one of the last after starting on the pole to hit pit road. But this is a caution flag that is at least well-timed for him to get back on cycle with everybody else, because he did have to take the wave around last time to get back on the lead lap, Blake. So a positive there for Honeycutt. At least he'll have 66 laps or so to work his way back forward and see if he can't salvage something out of this night.
Yeah, see if they can salvage something, as well as a lot of these cars that are kind of in that situation where they have to take the wave around here. Obviously, DeJong, as you see on your screen, the first off of pit road, but you see a couple of cars directly in front of them. Lasovich, who was a part of that spin, kind of becomes a beneficiary of the yellow flag and will have the opportunity to be at the tail end of the lead lap and get waved around the pace car, along with Jacob Hall and a couple of other cars that are up here at the front of the field. Another one getting a wave around is Brandon McKissick. But Jacob, this is when things really get interesting here, as it seems that these races up here in the top split this season have largely been clean, and we've seen a lot of green flag racing, but we get these yellows in the later stages of these races, and this is when the dial gets turned up a little bit, so to speak, and the aggression gets ramped up by these guys.
Yes, indeed. The aggression, and I do believe that will be a story that we follow to the finish now. I think, Guerrilla, it is time. They're going to turn the aggression meter up a couple of notches, because you're running out of time if you want to get towards the front. So the beating and banging that we referenced off the top, yeah, that may be coming into play a lot sooner rather than later.
Oh, I definitely believe it will. This is about the time when my race in the Coca-Cola series started kicking off with the caution fest starting there. But yeah, I don't be surprised if we see a few more cautions here in the next few laps, especially with the adrenaline ramping up. With now we're less than 65 laps to go as we're working lap 136. So don't be surprised if you see a few more shoves from these guys throughout the next few laps.
So the good news, I mentioned Caden Honeycutt. This was a bit of a break for him and some of the other drivers that had gotten caught a lap down by that caution flag right before halfway, Blake. Honeycutt going to restart 19th. So he's got some time. He's got the inside lane. I think he really will be able to make something out of this yet. It's not necessarily how he wanted to, but he's going to have a shot to move forward on this restart.
No,
yeah.
I think...
Go ahead, Blake.
No, I think you're definitely right that being able to restart on the inside here, we've seen. I was thinking that the middle line would come into play a little bit, but certainly being able to restart on the inside, I think, is going to help him out as the pace car will pull off, and we'll get set for these guys to go on lap 138.
One thing to note, Zach Nichols has reconnected to the server. We'll see if he rejoins the race to try and take advantage of potential carnage or decides to call it a day. Back underway with 63 laps to go, restarting at 138. Battle for third is on. Andrew Freenage to the inside. Cody Bias to the outside spin. Derek Justice down to the inside of the back straightaway. Caution flag back out. And we talked about the aggression. I'm not sure. I didn't have a good angle on it to know for sure if he had some help, but I'd say the rumpled back end of that Baskin-Robbins Toyota would imply that he had help. We'll get a look at the replay right here. And he's working off the corner. No, he just lost it. Off the exit of turn number 2, spins, just taps the inside wall with the back end and then with the left front. So it just got tight, Justin, and we talked about that. The back end kicks out, and you're along for the ride at that point.
He said over the radio the second he spun around, he had been trying to fight that feeling in the truck all race long, and that time it finally snapped around on the bottom side. There goes all the positions and track positioning gained by Justice all race with the long run pace. And mind you, too, these are cold tires they were just on that restart. And for those who do not know, restarting cold tires can be pretty darn tricky, to say the very least, Jacob, and cause spins like that on short runs.
Well, Guerrilla, I know that's the last thing that somebody like Derek Justice wanted to see. That's tough for us to see for him, too. He was inside the top 5 on that restart, had done such a job running his way through the field from a mid-pack starting spot, and now going to have to do it all over again.
Yeah, Justice has to be frustrated. I've been there before where you're up running up front and then you just throw your whole race away with one small little incident. But thankfully for him, he's got a lot of laps still to go, still working lap 141. So he's still got just under 60 laps to go. So he's definitely got time to get through the field. Definitely won't be as patient as he was earlier in the race on the long run as we went through it. But I definitely think Justice will be flying through that field as best as he can.
Welcome to the top 10, by the way. Daniel Roper, who started 29th of 34 on the grid after a very subpar qualifying effort. The 6 has finally found his way into contention. Problem being, he is starting on the outside lane for the next restart. So the High Performance Motorsports Autism Awareness entry gonna have some work to do. How tough is it, Guerrilla, for those restarting on the outside lane, particularly back in traffic?
Oh, it's really difficult, especially if you're in the middle of the pack, because everyone's fighting for that bottom. So as soon as one guy gets down there on the bottom, it just immediately stacks up the bottom lane, and you still have to wait for another hole to fill in as you see him starting to get ready for the restart. But I mean, it's really difficult, especially if you're about where let's see, Garrett Maines is or so, right around the mid-pack. It's just, once you get in that zone where people start filing in, that bottom lane just keeps getting longer and longer, and you still struggle to find more spots to fill in. So then it's just a battle of if you can stay on the outside and maintain as the checkup started happening at the bottom. But that's the only way you're able to gain spots as the bottom lane fills in. But yeah, it's just super difficult, and it's really hard to make sure you hold that outside lane on the restarts.
We saw him on the screen a moment ago. I want to give a call to the 31 of Brian Blackford as well. Blackford has had a nice run through the field, halfway there, 28th up to 13th. He's not the biggest mover in this race, but he's done a nice job. That four-screen number 31, and by the way, one of the, I believe, the blue oval contingent. That's another thing we haven't really pointed out. Blake McCandless in this race. Blackford he's running the new Ford F-150 that just came out in this new build. The first time we've seen one of these Road to Pro races with all 3 makes in it, and that not only aesthetically pleasing, but it's been fun to watch.
It certainly has, and he and a couple of Fords have made their way up front. Casey Tucker, another one, back up into the top 20 after starting shotgun on the field, but we'll put that on pause for a moment. We're green flag racing as they fan out 3 wide here on the front straightaway.
3 wide back in the pack, headed down to turn 1. Top 2 go single file. Andrew Freenage inside, Cody Bias outside. That's the first battle on the racetrack for third as they work down the back straightaway. Freenage with a half truck length advantage. Meanwhile, tracking the race leader, Femi Olot on the back bumper. Mitchell DeYoung, he wants the race lead. In trouble back in the pack. They're wrecking off 4.
Michael Fenlinson got turned around coming through turn 3. They were going near 3 wide. Try to keep it off Dylan C. Jones, but a huge dive from behind from Braden Bortles ended up setting around his machine. So caution again is out here, Jacob, and already apologies over the radio and understanding from the fellow drivers.
That's just one of those accordion effects, isn't it, Blake? We get a look at the replay, and it's just, a little bit too deep of a dive, a tag, and a spin, and we're lucky that wasn't any worse than what it was. How everybody was able to avoid Fenlison and no one else was collected in that, I really don't know, because it's very narrow in the middle of the corners here at Richmond, and we get a look on board at Boulos, and there's the tap to the back of Fenlison, and very evasive action. Jake Matheson may need a uniform change after that one. I don't know how that 52 managed to slip through there.
It certainly is, Jacob. And really, this is an accordion effect and shows you, especially on these restarts, how important it is to get to the bottom of the racetrack. I saw plenty of moves, including this one that caused this initial stack up back here in the pack. It was really all caused by Dylan Jones. And I won't say caused because Jones is just doing his part to get to the bottom side. He throws it down all the way to the apron almost here on the back straightaway to try and defend that bottom line. And that just causes a little bit of a stack up in the back of the pack. And unfortunately, Bulos was just not able to see that in time. Obviously, nothing intentional, and it wasn't like Braden was just full out sending it into the corner, but that's just what you're going to see a lot here because these drivers have figured out that you want to be on the bottom, not only on these restarts, but entering turn 3. You don't want to get freight train on the outside, so you're going to see a lot of aggressive moves to defend and keep that track position on the bottom.
Fourth caution flag of this race coming out now with 54. It'll be 53 laps to go when they come back to the line. Here's a look at how the top 20 stack up as it sits. Mitchell de Jong leads the way. Femi Olot sits second. Andrew Freenage is third. Cody Bias and Stephen Wilson the front 5. Donovan Strauss is 6th. Alan Bose 7th, Jarrett Liebert in 8th, Garrett Maines is 9th, and Seth the Merchant is 10th. Daniel Roper slid back to 11th in that exchange. Brian Blackford 12th. Carson Hocevar is 13th. Ryan Kuhn is 14th, and Briar LaPrade sits in the 15th position. Dylan Jones, Caden Honeycutt, Brian Mercurio, Casey Tucker, and Jake Matheson, who we mentioned, just barely got through that melee in 20th. Derek Bordeaux in 21st. May Justin Prince have gotten a little bit of contact with the wall trying to avoid that spin a couple of laps ago, trying to get a look at the right side of the 9 truck, and yeah, it's a little wrinkled on both front and back end. So he's had a date with the wall, and now that we get a look at the back end, the right side of that spoiler's a little jacked up as well.
And it was trying to make sure he didn't run over that gray and black machine you just seen up the road moments ago. Casey Tucker, when they had a bit of a stack up, remember, in that incident in 3 and 4, pin-pawned off his truck's right front and rear fender and into the wall. So Bordeaux now going to have to deal with a bit of that aero damage. And that is also, mind you, a very sensitive area of the truck for the FSR machine, where if you hit it hard enough, it affects the steering and makes it very difficult, as talked about, to maintain pace on corner exit and properly turn on corner exit. It might be a rough next 51 laps or so for that machine.
We're looking at a restart with 51 to go. We're working lap 149. Lights are atop the iRacing pace car. Mitchell de Jong, Femi Olot once again going to line up on the front row as we get set to return under the green flag. As far as a track position race, 5 of the top 8 drivers started in one of the top 8 spots, and that is where they continue to run. But the pole sitter trying to work forward from 17th. De Jong back to the race lead as we restart at lap 150. They're 3 wide behind them. Stephen Wilson down low. Into the sucker hole goes Andrew Freenage, and way up top is Cody Bias.
Oh, this isn't going to be good. They're bouncing and spinning down the back. Hosemar's around.
Carson Osavar goes around into the pack. Everybody trying to scatter. Caution flag waves for the 5th time in this race. Hosevar with from 12th position goes around. He's got front end damage in the corner. Yellow is back out. Hosevar takes the tow, and that is going to take him out of contention in that GM parts number 40 as we get a look at the replay. And this seemed almost inevitable as Hosevar went to the bottom. Daniel Roper, Seth DeMerchant was there. We're actually getting a look at it. There was already contact between DeMerchant and Roper headed into turn 1. They were 3 wide ahead, and Roper came down, and Hosevar tried to go down to the apron and ended up just getting hooked, and then got slammed into by both the 14 of Fenlison and I think, was that the 20 of Jacob Hall as well?
Believe so.
It was Jacob Hall. So heavy damage, and that's just a case of drivers being unable. Derek Justice got spun in the back of that as well, but it's the hit by Hall that was the biggest hit for Hosevar, and I don't know if it's terminal damage, but it's certainly pretty heavy damage as we see a decent host of cars from the back half of the field on pit road after that one.
And I think, Jacob, that was just inedible with the 3 wide coming off turn 2. That's never good, mind you, at Richmond. And just with all that contact up front, mind you, Bias had door-to-door contact coming off the corner that stacked everybody up in that situation. And I think everyone just followed them in that 2 to 3 wide, especially since Traded Lapsovich was also sliding. And make it 2 of the past 3 caution flags. Justice has now been involved in the 17.
Yeah, how quickly the wheels can fall off a race, and a little bit of front end damage when Justice went down and tapped that inside wall. So yeah, and Justice had some help. That was the 20 of Hall that actually got into him and sent him spinning before Hall ultimately came plowing into the driver's side of the 40 of Carson Hocevar. So a lot of tough breaks in that puts us back under caution for the 5th time in tonight's race.
And this was exactly what drivers were fearing, was if it got to the last quarter of this race, if attrition would decide the running order of this event. And now it's starting to really start to come to fruition. In our news, though, at this point, Jacob, if you are in a good track position situation, as long as you don't get a run of more than 15 laps, I think you stay out. And if you have the track position, congratulations, you likely get to keep it. The bad news is a lot of trucks now have damage. Drivers like Bias now with a bit of damage now on the right side, just a minor bit on the right front. Others behind him had some more significant damage after snapping around. And remember, others might deal with some overheating issues here. This is going to be very tricky. Already, drivers going to have to think about managing some of their damage here to get to the finish.
Well, Guerrilla, we talked about cautions having the potential to breed cautions, especially at a place like Richmond. This race was so good for so long, and now it would almost seem it started to take that turn, as our friend Darrell Waltrip once said, of going so bad so quickly.
Yeah, indeed it has so far, but we'll see if we can clean it up here with just under 50 laps to go. But yeah, it's just none of those, the classic saying is cautions breed cautions. So yeah, it's just a matter of everyone's trying to go for the bottom lane because they know how powerful it is. And one thing I mentioned earlier was the whole stack ups on the restart. When you go down to the bottom lane, that's what we're seeing a lot of now as we're going off into turn 3. Some of these drivers are going from the top to the bottom, and they're making a really aggressive move, and the guy who they're passing doesn't really notice it until they get to the end of the corner, and that's why you see a lot of these spins like we saw with Fenlison in turn 3 caution ago. But yeah, it's just everyone's trying to go, and there's just not much room to go.
Not at all. We're going to restart with 45 laps to go yet again. De Jong and Olaf on the front row. Wilson and Freenage now 3rd and 4th, and Steven Wilson's run up through the field, I think important to note, because he gets the inside lane and settles in behind his teammate as we go back to green flag. Alan Bowes has jumped up as well, so make it 3 total advantage cars, or trucks rather, on the inside, trying to chase down your leader in the VRS 23. Battles on for second. Steven Wilson not content. He goes to the inside, almost forces Olot up the track, and Alan Bowes gonna get into this mix as the total advantage trucks shuffle for position.
And some apologies coming over the radio that time with the fellow teammates. Wilson saying he overdrove the corner. Maines also in that same section got really snapped loose. So these drivers, the track may be cooling down, but because they're carrying more speed here, Jacob, they're really starting to have to battle off the corner to make sure they don't snap off of it with that extra bit of speed. A bit of bumping and banging, though, 3 wide, though, behind Liebert.
Behind Liebert is where the 3 wide is. I was watching Garrett Maines' truck shuffle sideways as Liebert almost lost that truck halfway down the straightaway. He hangs on to it back around the 7th position. Just ahead of him, though, Garrett Maines is on the move. He's side by side with Femi Olot for a spot in the top 5. The Smithfield Tundra coming to the front. Olot trying to do the over-under on him. Crosses Maines back up.
Off the exit of turn 2. It's Cody Bias around, and that is going to collect several cars here on the back straightaway. A couple of cars able to scatter through, but that was 3 wide, Jacob, and it did not work. Cody Bias was on the outside and gets tagged by Dylan Jones, and a couple of cars are not able to escape. Some heavy damage on the Jones machine. You have Brian Mercurio who's involved. The 19 of Briar LaPrade, Seth DeMerchant, several trucks here. Big damage on the back straightaway.
We're getting a look at the replay right now. Daniel Roper was just ahead of this, and that looks like DeMerchant got into Bias and turned him. And that sparked a parking lot halfway down the back straightaway. I almost want to see that from overhead to know for sure, but at least the head-on shot that we had looking down the back straightaway looked like it was DeMerchant that was directly behind Bias. Here's the look from overhead. Bias may have had to check up just a little bit on the outside of 3 wide. They got all that started. He got a little bit wide. Oh, no, it was ahead of DeMerchant. It was the 18 of Dylan Jones.
I think based on that angle there, he expected it to just be too wide. I don't think he got the call completely that there were still 3. That's why he arced it down right across the 18. And you'll see it, I think, a little bit here. They were back to 2 wide, 3 rows, 2 rows deep. But because of the position of the truck on the bottom line, they only get sometimes, if they don't use a real-world spotter, that it's too wide. That was the case. Bias goes around, and that stacks up everybody like Legos in the back half of the field again.
And I'm trying to count trucks that were in that. Jones, Bias, I saw several around that battle got swept up in it late. Trying to count maybe 7 trucks in total that looked like got some sort of damage out of it. We'll get one more look at it from overhead here as they work again 3 by 3 through the corner. It starts with Jones into Bias. LaPrade got collected right at the end. Caden Honeycutt's lucky he got through that, Blake McCann. Listen, I'm really not sure how. Honeycutt just kind of sent it to the bottom and prayed there wasn't going to be anybody there.
Well, and that's really all you can do. I know there was one driver I was riding on board with, and that was Derek Justice, who was initially in the back part of trying to get through that accident, but he and spotter Connor Crichton did an incredible job of making his way through that. But it is very difficult here because you just see cars going low, in the middle, going high. And, of course, you want to keep your track position, especially late here in the race. There's so much on the line on every one of these races. But here you see the look from Derek Justice. Where do you go? There's cars even past the wreck, and he did a nice job there along with his spotter calling, oh, look, they're still wrecking up there. So that's how difficult it can be, and you just never know where to go. Sometimes you just have to pick and hope and pray that you pick the right lane to go through.
I was going to see if Bauer would give us the onboard for Honeycutt, but Justice's was more entertaining there, Guerrilla. That was a piece of driving by the 17 to get through there, and I think we may get Caden Honeycutt right here to see him get through this as well. I thought LaPrade was going to be clear and just didn't quite.
Yeah, it's just one of those cases where it's like you just basically have to either sit and wait, or you have to go through it as you see the car is behind Honeycutt as he just slides by the inside as LaPrade took the hit for him on the outside there. But yeah, in the case of Justice, you just sit and wait, hope it all clears up, and in his case it worked out. But in the case of Breyer, just missing that first wreck and getting clipped in the rear end, just wasn't working out for him, so he got a little bit of damage. So yeah, once the track gets blocked, there's just nowhere to go, and you just basically, like you said, just hope and pray.
If you're Mitchell DeYoung, you're surrounded now. You've got one to your right side from total advantage. You've got one to your back bumper from total advantage. And you've got to wonder if are they going to gang up on me on this restart. We're about to find out. It's Steven Wilson to the right flank of the VRS 23. It's the 21 of Alan Bowes to the rear deck lid of the 23. DeYoung gets the jump. We go back green. It's 36 laps to go here in Richmond. Garrett Maines all the way to the bottom. Donovan Strauss gets stuffed 3 wide in turn 1. And
nearly 4 wide, in fact, for Donovan Strauss with massive tire spin off the start. Already shuffled outside the top 10. That's how bad the start was. But everyone else who was on the bottom line just able to take advantage. Already 2-3 wide of the pack again.
Steven Wilson wants his second win of the year. He drops all the way to the yellow line. Battle for the race lead as they work off turn number 2. Wilson has a half truck length inside. Contact back in the pack. Jarrett Liebert spins and collects about 3 cars inside the top 10. Caution flag gonna wave, and I think it may negate that pass for the lead. A heavily damaged Splash and Go Graphics Chevrolet Silverado for Jarrett Liebert. Front end damage, back end damage, and yet again, Caden Honeycutt with a masterful escape to move up now inside the top 10 as we get a look at what happened to Liebert, Justin Prince.
And I think Honeycutt's going to have a nervous breakdown from the amount of wrecks he's had to avoid. This one was nearly the whole back third of the field. Liebert really struggled off the corner, got a little bit of a bump we've seen there for the back end, and just set him around. Nowhere for everyone else again to go. A lot of them did not stop in time to avoid that. Kuhn, many others involved.
And Honeycutt, I know we've talked about him the last 3 yellows, Blake, but you watch this from his view, and he mentioned, Justin mentioned almost a nervous breakdown. You can't see it from, until you look behind him, but he was almost hooked in that deal.
Yes, he was, as Roper came screaming down the racetrack after he had hard contact with, it looked like Jarrett Liebert, who got loose in front of the field. And Jacob, I didn't know if we would see it, but I think the terminology is fitting for the situation, the big one here at Richmond. And you think it's possible with just how thin it gets on corner entry there in turns 3 and 4. But I mean, there's probably about 10, 11 trucks that got some form of damage in this wreck, including a couple of crippling hits for a couple of drivers. Brian Blackford got hard into the outside wall. There were several trucks that are not going to be able to see the end of this thing. Donovan Strauss was a part of it as well. And again, this is just what we were talking about. Once we get these late race yellows, everyone's just fighting for the bottom, and you see it right there. Brian Mercurio, my goodness, what an avoidance he had as he nearly got knocked in it. But the big one strikes here at Richmond, of all places.
All right, Guerrilla. We've wiped out a bunch of them. Is this now a case of who's left?
It might be. I'm just looking to see how many clean trucks we have, and I think it's roughly up until about Seth the Merchant before in the 8th spot before we find our damaged trucks behind them. I think everybody behind him has at least a little bit of a right front crinkle or worse behind them for wear. So I mean, yeah, basically it's the top 7 who still have clean trucks for the most part. So I wouldn't be shocked if we have a battle out there. There's still roughly about like 20 cars total behind the truck, the pace car. Yeah, I still don't think we're done yet, especially up front, because we're getting more dicier and dicier up front, as you saw with Steve Wilson going for that move on Mitchell DeYoung for the lead there on the restart. So don't be surprised if we're not done yet.
I'm not convinced that we are done at all. Blake McCandless, the Total Advantage boys, I think, are starting to get a little impatient. They're not content to see DeYoung walk away with this. And Steven Wilson, I think, has the better truck or the best truck on the short run if we can put together enough laps for him to use it.
Well, I think that's true, Jacob, but the launch that DeYoung is able to get, you really can't overstate how important it is being the leader. And if I were DeYoung here and knowing if history tells us, as Larry Mack would talk about, history tells us that we're probably not done wrecking them up here. So if I'm DeYoung right now, I'm just randomly restarting in the restart zone. I'm going early, I'm going late, I'm going everywhere just to try and get a beat and keep that advantage of being the leader, because Wilson might be faster, but that jump that DeYoung is able to get is so important, and I think you'll see it once again here.
Restart will come with 29 laps to go. The VRS, number 23 of DeYoung, waiting, and he goes a little bit earlier in the box than I've seen him the last couple of restarts. Keep an eye on Garrett Maines in the Smithfield Toyota Tundra. He's up inside the top 5 now, trying to cross down, battling with Alan Bowes. That's the race for 3rd. Wilson has gotten to the bottom. He's chasing DeYoung for the lead down the back straightaway.
Maisnoy tapped the wall that time down the back straightaway, but still just can't get clear. That bottom side, still the better line. You can defend up on the top, we've seen throughout the night, but the best way to pass, beyond that yellow line. Eventually, Maines might have to back off unless he can force a massive check from Bowes on that bottom line. Look behind him, though. They're still 2 wide, multiple rows deep, and sneaking off the corners.
Sneaking closer to the race leader is Steven Wilson. He's starting to paint that yellow line, Blake McCandless, and keeping pace, closing in on Mitchell DeYoung. He was a touch slower last time by, but the best battle behind him. They're still door-to-door for 3rd. Our Bowes and Maines.
It is Caden Honeycutt that goes around. He got a tap, a little bit of help. He honestly didn't do much of a spin. He gets turned around, about 90 degrees here. And what were we talking about? Total advantage, being impatient. Femi Olat drives it in on the bottom and gives Honeycutt just a little bit of help there off the corner. But he is the only casualty in this wreck. And to be honest with you, surprised that the yellow flag was triggered right there. But nevertheless, just a 1-car incident off the exit of turn number 2.
And there is some damage to the back end of the Friends of Jacqueline Foundation number 10. But Guerrilla, if I'm Honeycutt, that may be the best case scenario. Yeah, there's damage, but he hit it relatively flat, which is better than the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I did see the front end slap the wall just a little bit as we're watching the replay right here. Just Femi just had a little bit of a space right there, and Honeycutt closed the door as soon as Femi got in that hole. But yeah, it's just a little bit of no room for either truck to fit there. Two trucks going for the same space. But yeah, I think Honeycutt hit the wall just a little bit hard on the front end, so I wouldn't be shocked if he had a little bit of engine damage there. But I wouldn't be shocked if that damage isn't too much for him.
And I think if you trace it back, Blake McCandless, a little bit further, Femi wasn't. Femi was a little bit tired of it. It looked like Caden was defending a little bit harder, and the lap before, and Femi just decided, hey, it's 26, 27 laps to go, and he was, as they say in the short track world, done messing around.
And that's 100% the case, Jacob. And it's one of those things, you can't blame Femi. He's trying to get everything he can right here at the end of the race. You need these good finishes to make it in Road to Pro, especially, Jacob, when you talk about just the fact that it's not necessarily about always finishing up front. It's just about not having those potential drop weeks stack up. But right now, Honeycutt made an aggressive block there. You can't blame him for that. And Femi just rolled through the center, and I'm sure wasn't too appreciative of the move Honeycutt made on the front straightaway, and Honeycutt's just a casualty of it. But you think about it, Honeycutt, he gets in the outside wall, pretty heavy damage on his truck, but there's not a whole lot of trucks out here. A top 20 is not a terrible effort here in Road to Pro. You're going to get at least enough points to keep moving on by in this series. And there's really only 20 trucks on the lead lap, so as long as you can finish this thing, you may not get an above-average point stay, but you're certainly not going to hurt yourself.
I'm looking down the order. Speaking of not necessarily hurting yourself, Justin Prince, the driver that all these late cautions may be benefiting, especially as some of them are out of the race or buried on pit road and dropping further down the running order, is the driver that's been able to get 3 or 4 of his laps back. At one point was as many as 18 laps down after losing connection earlier on. But the championship leader coming into tonight, Zach Nichols, did return to the racetrack in his machine, and he is now up to 27th, and based on some of the other trucks that may be out of this race, could get to 22nd or so, and still with 22 laps to go, if we have another quick yellow that really trashes some trucks, could get even further than that.
Absolutely. Already doing the math with so many drivers having blown engines in the pit lane alone, like Strauss, like Labor, like Dylan Rafferty, Daniel Roper among some of the drivers with several minutes of damage repairs. He can gain 3 in the next 5 laps alone. So there's a chance he can quietly, depending on how things shape out here, come away still with the top 20 finish, depending on how many more trucks are involved in future incidents here, especially since, guess what? We're getting ready for 21 to go still.
We are, and the field doubled up again. Lights are out on the pace car, so it'll be a run of 21 laps when we get the green flag, and see what we do from there. So continuing to, we'll keep an eye on the championship leader coming in and see what else he can make as far as progress. A good jump for Mitchell DeYoung as they come back to green. He gets away by a truck length and a half from the 5 of Stephen Wilson. Now side by side again, it's Alan Bowes and Garrett Maines. Maines not able to hang as well on the outside this time. That opens the door for the 7 of Andrew Freenash. Freenash taking advantage. He'll go to the inside of Maines for 4th.
Still getting a little bit dicey here, though. Maines is stuck on the top line. Still hasn't been able to find a hole. It looks like he's finally found one. Backed up really hard and dived really hard to cut to the bottom grove.
Michael Guerrilla, that is aggression to the nth power at this point to try and get yourself forward, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot of space there, but Maines definitely tried it there, going off into turn 1, trying to see if he can get underneath him. But now he paid the price there. So now he's falling off an extra car length behind Freenash. But that's a little too aggressive for my liking, as now we're working with less than 20 to go here as Maines now slots himself back into 5th.
He did what he had to do, and if we get another caution, that's going to be an advantage for the Smithfield Toyota. It'll put him back on the inside lane, which is a luxury he has not had on the last few restarts. How about the job to the 41 of Brian Mercurio, who's right behind Maines, and the impressive moves that he's put on to get to 6th. Side by side for 2nd, though, ahead of him. It's the Total Advantage teammates. Alan Bowes finally to the inside of Steven Wilson. They're going for 2nd, and Freenage is back there in 4th.
Well, and this was a battle, Jacob, that really played out. Wilson threw an aggressive block, much like we saw Honeycutt do a couple of laps ago on Alan Bowes, so the teammates not faring along too well, and all this allows is Mitchell DeYoung to continue to pull away by a couple of truck lengths as they continue to battle it out here. Steven Wilson is not giving up there on the outside, but Bowes may take advantage, and here comes Freenage to the bottom side looking for 3rd.
Freenage looking for 3rd. Maines is back there in 5th. He'll be the next one to try and take advantage of the 5 being on the outside lane. The question now is, can Alan Bowes run Mitchell DeYoung down? Freenage side by side. They race for 3rd and the final podium position. Maines is back there in the Smithfield Toyota. He is racing in 5th, looking for a little bit of room to race. And the battle's now on. Briar LaPrade has had an incredible rally after being involved in a couple of cautions. He looks to the inside. LaPrade does on Mercurio. That's for 6th.
Nearly that time, Mercurio nearly slapped the wall on the high side. So I think at this point, with this track constantly cooling down here again, this is going right back into Pratt and Co.'s way. And into the wall goes Mercurio, got stuck on the fence, 4 positions lost.
And as they shuffle around Mercurio, Derek Justice, weren't we talking about him being involved in about 3 cautions here in the final third of this race? He's worked his way back into the top 10. That's a salvaging night, a rally night that when you're talking about the championship and the top 20, Blake McCandless, a kind of night like this can save you in terms of advancing to the Pro Series.
Well, and it helps. You think Derek Justice, with all the spinning that he was doing, was having to come down and get tires when he was involved in those accidents. I think that's helping him a little bit with a mangled Baskin-Robbins Toyota, that he's able to use those fresh tires to try and make his way forward. But you look out front, Steven Wilson has fallen all the way back into the clutches of Briar LaPrade as he now finally cuts it down, and he sends it in on Garrett Maines looking for 4th.
Oh, LaPrade had to check up. I thought he was going to get turned by Dylan Jones there, but Steven Wilson not taking any prisoners on Maines. Maines stuck to the outside. LaPrade for a spot in the top 5 now in the Ledford Billiard Supply, number 19. He's made the advance forward after recently joining the ranks of the partners at Burton Clearman Esports. LaPrade is there. What a run this is going for him in the 19. But up front, Alan Bowes is running down Mitchell DeYoung. We may have a battle for the lead inside of 10 laps to go. 2 hands from Barney the Flagman. This time it's a 10-lap shootout at Richmond.
And this is going to get very intriguing. Mind you, they do have lap traffic ahead. Honeycutt and Derek Boudreau are just up the road for the battle for the lead. So this may be a bit of a factor. Last time, Bowes actually lost nearly a full 1/10 of a second. As well, keep in mind, Freenage is the quickest of the 3. He was a 10th quicker than the leader just the previous time, and now he's in the fence.
Yeah, Freenage overdrove turn 4 there, got him up into the outside wall, working traffic. Derek Bordeaux gives way on the outside lane. Bowes is not making time. Freenage goes to the outside, and Bordeaux trying to get out of the way. 8 laps to go this time. Blake, anybody have anything for DeYoung?
Well, it seems Bowes is not necessarily running him down right there. This is a bit of the advantage that DeYoung has had. He got out to a huge lead. He can save his tires a little bit. Maybe these guys walk him down just enough to at least sniff him just a little bit. But I think you see right now DeYoung having that short run speed that we've seen him have all night long as he stretches his lead out. This time by, it was 0.62 last time. It is now 0.73. So DeYoung, the fastest truck on the racetrack, and looking to head home.
And how about the battle for 5th late in this race? Dylan Jones has found his way past LaPrade now, and Jones is inside the top 5, coming to 6 laps to go. What a run it is for him right now. I don't think we've called Jones's name, but maybe once all night.
And he was actually the quickest truck inside the top 10 last time, the only driver in the 22.7s. So that truck, despite the damage, despite all the bumps and bruises, has found some great speed again at the end of this race. Whatever Jones has done, him and his team, it has been very quick. Gained a truck length alone on entry on the back end of Wilson.
Battle is on for second. Inside 5 laps to go. Nearly contact between Freenage and Bose. Freenage is quicker. The 7 wants a way through. They work down the back straightaway. Freenage with the run. Bose throws the block in 3.
And Freenage looking to get that corner exit that he feels he has over the Total Advantage Motorsports machine. But how about Bose holding strong on the outside? Freenage is going to look low, but Bose shuts the door right there. Bose doing a dutiful job holding them off as DeYoung continues to scramble away.
DeYoung scrambling away. It's nearly 1 second now. Coming to 3 laps to go this time. A Ford versus a Chevrolet behind him. So as DeYoung pulls out and traffic stacks up, whoa, that's a big closing rate. Will Norton in the 25 almost got ran over by second and third there. Almost a checkup for the 21 of Bose. Freenage trying one more time. Does he have the run here? Again, Bose throws the block.
And the traffic's starting to get fairly thick, but now it is starting to open up. The question is going to be, will it stay green with the traffic the rest of the group has to deal with? 2 laps to go. Here comes Freenage to the bottom of the racetrack with a big boost.
Big run to the inside. Blake McCandless. Freenage is there. He'll have the spot off too.
And Freenage looking to edge ahead as again DeYoung marches away. Freenage to the bottom side of the racetrack. He clears Bose out of turn number 4, but right now the white flag in the air for Mitchell DeYoung.
Mitchell DeYoung, everybody called him the road course guy when he dominated the Roval. He is much more than that, however, as the sponsor on his truck and his performance tonight has shown. It's going to be a dominant second win of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro season. Off turn 4, a road specialist no more. Mitchell DeYoung wins Richmond and collects win number 2 on the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro season. Andrew Freenage second, Alan Bose third, Dylan Jones and Steven Wilson the rest of the top 5.
And Jacob, a few times throughout his campaign and throughout his time at iRacing, he's shown the oval muscles when it comes to his speed. Tonight's probably the most cleanest and best driven race I've ever seen him drive on an oval circuit. Heck of a job by Mitchell, especially on the long runs in this race, to bring that VRS truck home for the W.
He wanted to shake the ringer moniker. Blake McCandless, I'd say it's officially shook tonight.
No doubt about it, Jacob. And you think in a race like this, where especially late in the going, you had all of these issues, but Mitchell DeYoung was fast enough to keep his track position. Obviously was great in qualifying, but was fast enough to keep the track position, hold these guys off, whether it was short run, whether it was long run. I think there's no doubt about it here, Jacob. Mitchell DeYoung, who has very recently, he was back in 3rd or 4th split just a couple of races ago. He has come to top split, and he is not messing around. He's here to, he means business, whether it's on a road course, whether it's on an oval. DeYoung is going to be one of the ones we'll have to look at the rest of the season.
And he's going full 4-wheel drift for the celebration around this Richmond Raceway as he brings it back. And what a drive. What a performance by DeYoung tonight. And I would call that easily one of the more impressive things that we've seen so far in this Road to Pro season. So that's going to complete the racing, but we're not done. We'll have post-race coverage coming up in a couple of minutes. 152 of 200 laps led by Mitchell DeYoung tonight. We'll step aside, and we'll be back with the post-race show here on Podium Esports in just a couple of minutes from Richmond Raceway.
Coming up to the line, being chased, and it was Braden Johnson. Unbelievable finish. It was 1/1000th of a second between them.
Green flag in the air. We are racing in the 2020 24 Hours of Daytona.
They go door to door for the feature race lead here on the last lap of the race. Side by side for the race lead in the final corner at Homestead. Down the ride again for the race lead. This is unbelievable stuff here tonight.
Loma is going to have to be very deep on the brakes, and he is very deep on the brakes. It's side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
It'll be side by side. Davies low, Ottinger high. To the very inside is Garrett low. 4 wide at the stripe.
For all he's worth here on this outside line, neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out?
Verstappen starts to squeeze on the inside, and now he'll try and straight line it. Goes under the apron. Drag race to the line. It's so close to call.
Welcome back to Podium Esports post-race coverage of round 7 of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro from Richmond Raceway as we wrap up a short track battle and see one of the dominant performances of the season put in by Mitchell DeYoung, who led 152 of 200 laps tonight. And we will go ahead and bring you the full field rundown before we talk to some of our top finishers here this evening. And we mentioned the beatdown, the VRS number 23 ending in victory lane. Mitchell DeYoung taking the victory when all was said and done. Andrew Freenage finishing second in, I believe, a best finish of the season for him on Road to Pro. Alan Bowes was third. Dylan Jones and Stephen Wilson through the top 5. Briar LaPrade had a great run in his own right, just off the top 5 in 6th. 7th went to Derek Justice in a great rally. 8th to Cody Bias. A couple of really good rallies inside the top 10. Femi Olot fell back late, and Garrett Maines, Justin Prince completing that top 10.
Brian Mercurio recovering from some earlier incidents to get back up to P11. Seth the Merchant, a rough race for him, finishes in 12th. Traded Lapsevich quietly came home with a 13th after staying out of the multiple big ones. Jake Matheson, involved in one of those said big ones, still came home in 14th. Thomas Axum comes home 15th, and Casey Tucker comes away in 16th, 17 seconds behind the leader as the final driver of the lead lap. Will Norton, Caden Honeycutt, 1 lap down, 17th and 18th. Ryan Kuhn and Brian Blackford not only round out the top 20 here, Blake, that rounds out the drivers 1 lap down.
It certainly does. The rest of these drivers, well, they saw their fair share of bad luck in this one. Derek Bordeaux finishes up in 21st. 22nd was Zach Nichols. 23rd, Braden Buyos. 24th was Brandon McKissick. 25th was Donovan Strauss. Jarrett Liebert was 26th. 27th was Dylan Rafferty. 28th, Daniel Roper. 29th was Michael Finlayson. And 30th was Carson Hocevar. 31st, Jacob Hall. 32nd was Adam Gilliland. 33rd, Blake Neer, and 34th, after being involved in that lap 1 incident, was Jordy Lopez. That's your full field rundown, and Jacob Seelman has once again caught up with a very happy Mitchell DeYoung, his second win in the top split in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series, and he's excited to talk to Jacob, isn't he?
I would imagine so. Mitchell, first, congratulations. And, you know, we at Podium Esports listen to a lot of people say, well, he's a road course specialist after you mopped up at the Roval a few races ago. But I would say you easily shook the Ringer moniker tonight. You told me after that win that you wanted to really prove that you could get it done on these ovals too. 152 of 200 laps led on one of the toughest short tracks in sim. I'd say you did a pretty good job of accomplishing that mission tonight.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. Shoot, I can't believe we won that race. That's insane. You know, kind of back before the Roval, I was actually racing this track in the national car just to farm some iRating, but I didn't realize that. I think that really helped me kind of figure out the line. Just makes testing so much easier. You know, I was excited for this one because, you know, you can actually try to make a little more of a difference as a driver rather than, I guess, Michigan, where it's mostly full throttle. And I was really looking forward to it. You know, I've been stuck prepping for the Le Mans 24, the real life race that they're putting on, and for the last few weeks, and really up until yesterday, I got to do my first laps here for Richmond. So with that said, I had no idea the result would be this good. You know, Keegan helped me throw together a setup real quick for a Q based off the VRS one, and I definitely underdrove it a bit, but still put us in third place. Starting well here is huge, and the rest of it just tried to save the tires, tried to pick the battles wisely. Had a few contacts here and there, and glad I didn't really cause any drama with that. But man, this is a heck of a race. It was so intense at the end.
How difficult were those late restarts and just continually trying to change everything up so that those behind you, particularly the Total Advantage boys, who kind of had you cornered there on a couple of the late ones so that they couldn't necessarily get underneath you? Though I know Wilson tried it at one point.
For sure. I have to say I completely got saved by a caution one time. Steven was going to get the fast done, but it came out and saved me. Really, kind of in the first run, I was about to crash every corner because I was so loose. You know, we tightened it up a little bit and thought we were going to be good to go for the rest of the run. And, you know, we ended up getting a lot of short runs. Track cooled down a lot, and I was so tight I couldn't make the car turn. And with the lack of kind of testing cold weather, my own fault, should have done that, and just had no idea how hard to drive the car. Really, I was kind of putting myself in a bad situation. I knew Steven and Alan and Cody and everyone behind me were gonna capitalize if I made a mistake, and thankfully we kind of figured it out towards the end. But wow, yeah, it was one of the most intense ones for sure I've been a part of.
Where do you rank this one? I know obviously they're all special, but it would seem a major league oval win for a driver in yourself who hasn't necessarily been known as a power player on these ovals in the past. I imagine this one ranks pretty high up on the list.
Absolutely. You know, I felt like Homestead, I had a really good race going. I was in, you know, back in third split at the time, and almost had the win there. But for sure, to make top split, to have a good run like this, this is a cool one. I mean, for sure, I can probably rank it higher than the Roval just because it's so out of my element still. So I'm just really thankful to be here. You know, Keegan and Bobby that hung out as well during the race, you know, helped me give me the information I needed to succeed, and I'm very thankful for that. And yeah, what a race.
What a race indeed. I'll give you a chance. I know you mentioned Keegan Leahy, Bobby Zelensky. Anybody else that you want to give a shout out to, Mitchell? And what kind of momentum does this give you now? We're halfway through the season, going into the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I definitely think it's a big momentum boost after kind of a rough Michigan to have this. So we just keep moving forward from here. The goal is to get the pro license. But yeah, big shout out to Adam and Danny as well for helping me prepare, learn the track, and practice, you know, battling and stuff with me. And of course, all our team sponsors, Virtual Racing School, VTech, and Word Design, and of course you guys put on the broadcasts and everyone watching.
We appreciate it, Mitchell. Congratulations again, and we will look forward to seeing you as we take a couple weeks off and get back at it at Darlington on the 23rd.
Thanks, guys.
That is Mitchell DeYoung, who takes the victory tonight from the virtual Richmond Raceway, and we will shuffle over now and catch up with the driver who chased him to the finish line late and his most impressive run yet. Andrew Freenage standing by with Justin Prince.
Yes, indeed. Joins us here in the broadcast booth. And just 24 hours ago, you came home in second in RSR competition. Tonight, you come check that P3 in RSR. Tonight, you come home with an even bigger finish, P2 and Road to Pro. How are you feeling coming home with one of your best runs ever in R2P competition?
Yeah, just all the work that we put in this week, it's so good for it to pay off. And I think it hurt my performance last night, but definitely it paid off tonight. And I think tonight's really when it matters. So I can't believe we finished second in one of these things. It's just it's an honor to even be out here with half these drivers, half enough to compete the way we did.
And it took a lot of effort, Andrew, to march your way through the field, especially on the long run, as we've seen here tonight. One of the best drivers on said long run by as much as 1 to 2 tenths of a second quicker. How much difficult was it for you to be able to cut your way through the field and get yourself in position to try and win this race tonight? Yeah, just I love to practice, so we've done a ton of laps, and it was kind of squished to get us set up out in a week. So we kind of practiced. I knew the car was going to be loose, and these guys, this is some of the hardest competition you'll ever drive. So just to get under them off of 4 and get by them, and everybody's fighting for every position. So it was extremely hard. Put a lot of effort into it, and like I said, I'm just shocked that we were able to come out with a P2. Now this is now heading towards the second half of the Road to Pro schedule. And the next race coming up in a few weeks, it's a difficult one. Next race on the slate, Darlington, 140 laps. Your thoughts on Darlington with these trucks? Yeah, I like the track. This is really the second year I'm running these open setups, and you can make them loose or tight, so I'm probably going to make it a little looser there. I really do like that track running up against the wall, and hopefully we get a nice hot slick track, and it'll be a fun race. So we just got to start putting these runs together. We've been wrecked out the past few weeks in this, so just good to even cross the line this week. Anyone you want to thank for being a part of that iRacing Chevrolet Silverado's run this evening? Yeah, I want to say thanks to Lone Line. We've put in a ton of work. Everybody over there, I'm not going to list names because I know I'll forget somebody, but them as a whole, just all the effort they did. All the fans, I hope we put on a good show tonight. I know there's a few wrecks there at the end, but I hope everybody enjoyed it. All the drivers out there, I love racing this sim and racing against the guys in the top, and my family, of course, for putting up with this hobby. Thank you very much for the time. Congratulations on your best run in Road to Pro. Thanks so much, guys. And your second tonight started all the way in 14th position. Very happy driver this evening. Another fairly happy driver, I think, is standing by with Blake McCandless. Alan Bowe started inside the top 10, came away with the top 3 finish tonight, Blake.
He certainly did. He came in 10th in the Road to Pro point standings. And Alan, I think you definitely have to be happy. You come up 2 spots short of the goal, but definitely can't look too far down at a 3rd place finish.
Yeah, I coming into tonight, I was just wanting to run top 15 with everything and real life starting to kick back up, getting called back to work last week. I didn't have as much time to put into it as I have been, but P3, I certainly can't complain about that. That's a great point tonight.
It certainly is. And well, I know all of you guys at Total Advantage, Dead Zone Racing, talk about somewhat of the different preparation, because those of us who look at the schedule saw the 3-week break between Michigan and this race tonight. But obviously, the new build that iRacing puts out, it kind of throws a wrench in your guys' preparation, where you really only have about a solid week rather than the typical 2 to try to nail things down. With what you were talking about, maybe you didn't have as much time to prep. How does that really change things up when you're accustomed to having about half a month or so to prepare for these races?
You just really have to rely on the feedback that was given. We were actually able to take the base that we got from VRS, make a few changes. It was really tight from about 15 to 30, and after that it was good. Before that it was good. But everybody at Total Advantage Motorsports, Dustin Lingard, Houston Hamer, Colin Keister, they put in a lot of hours into the set for the week that we had, and I feel bad for them because I wasn't able to help them out as much as I usually do, but they did a good job making the right adjustments, just doing what they normally do.
Well, they certainly do a good job. You Total Advantage, the Total Advantage squad has been very quick these last couple of weeks, but we've crossed the halfway point now, and someone in your position, I know you mentioned earlier, you're just looking to come in here and maybe get a top 15 out of it. How does your perspective change that you're one of the drivers who's not only outside looking in, but you're in a pretty good position, especially after tonight? I have to imagine that you may be as high as maybe 8th or 7th or so once the points finally cycle out after all the splits complete their races tonight.
Big thing for me is just doing what I've been doing. Keep getting solid finishes. I don't need to win races. If I do, that's great. But I'm just points racing, especially with the tracks that we have coming up next. We have Darlington next race. That's a tough track to survive just by yourself, let alone with a field of cars. Then we have Dover. That's another one that can be tricky at times, especially without the dynamic tracks. And then Vegas is all right, and then Canadian Tire after that. That's going to be another one that, kind of like the Roval, it's going to have to put a lot of time in, and hopefully we could just keep clicking off top 5, top 10s. That's because at that point, that's really all we need.
Absolutely, you get what you can out here. But Alan, I'll go ahead and hand the microphone over to you one last time. No, it's a lot of people, like you said earlier, that puts a lot of effort into these things.
I got to thank Total Advantage Motorsports again, Landon Huffman. He's given us a lot of support this season. Colin Keister again for doing all that he does with the setup. Houston Hamer, Dustin Lingard. Teammates in the split, I also had Steven Wilson and Femi. Femi had a great race going. It's unfortunate that Steven and Femi got together, but they'll bounce back. We'll be back next week.
They certainly will. That's Alan Bose. He brings it home on the podium tonight in position number 3. And we have a couple of more drivers to talk with you about their races. Justin Prince has run down pit road, and he's caught up with the number 18 of Dylan Jones, who brought it home in 4.
Yes, indeed. Many of his fellow teammates from the fixed side of things calling him his hero with his performance tonight. From nearly to the back end of the field, 32nd up to 4th. Many times you got shuffled out to the top line, nearly up to the fence. Dylan, how do you feel to be able to sneak away with the top 5, being the fastest truck on the track, mind you, in the final 15 laps?
I think we're feeling pretty lucky. I'm sitting here looking at the replays and looking at this truck, and tell you what, it looks like I was at Martinsville tonight. I felt like it a little bit out there. We had some moments that should have ended our race multiple times. I think we used up at least 9 lives tonight. So coming out of here with what we did it's very exciting, and we're gonna take it.
You mentioned the feline-like reflexes to try and make moves. How difficult was it for you to slowly but surely crawl your way up, because it looked like you had long run speed, based similar to what your friend Andrew Freenosh did in this race from the front of the field? How difficult was it to get yourself up this field order?
It was pretty difficult. I definitely took my time in the beginning of that first run. Made a ton of spots. I think I got up to like 15th. That first caution came out, and truck really fell off. I was kind of happy for the caution with about 80 laps in there. And then at the end, you know, you kind of got to pick it up a notch. You got to take that easiness and put some aggression in there. And I mean, we had quite a few cautions at the end as everyone was doing the same thing. You can't let a spot go to waste out here.
Second half of the season for R2P. Discussed it a little bit with your fellow friend in Freenage with Darlington. Your thoughts on that race and the momentum you try and carry now for the final stretch of races?
I'm happy to have this momentum in the finish here because Darlington, yeah, I like the track, but I have not had good luck there throughout my seasons of running Road to Pro, and it's been a tough track for me and a lot of wrecks. So we're going to put in a lot of practice this week and try and keep it out of the wall, I guess.
Who do you want to thank for being a part of a stellar run for that completely white Chevrolet Silverado?
Yeah, little hodgepodge team out here. Me, a bunch of guys we run league with. Want to thank Dave Washington for on me tonight. He's definitely a voice I needed to hear to keep me calm through some of that stuff. Give a thanks to Steve Duran. Yeah, just told me not to wreck the whole time. Hey, Bomb. Daniel Eberhardt. He was definitely a big help this week and helped me with my long run speed.
Congratulations on the top 5 run. Let you get back to Durham because, as he calls you, you're his hero. Congrats. That was Dylan Jones coming home with the top 5 tonight. Stellar performance for him for the back end of the field. Meanwhile, up and down the top 10 was Steven Wilson. Heck of a performance for him as well, Blake.
Certainly so, as Steven Wilson, sorry about that, as he finishes up in the top 5 tonight. One of the handful of drivers that ended up starting outside the top 10 and found a way to keep his track position and make it work. And Steven, I gotta say, I think this Toyota Tundra that you have out here is probably one of the cleanest after crossing the checkered flag. There's barely a scratch on it.
Oh yeah, we had a pretty eventful time behind us for most of the race, as I heard, but you know, we had a pretty good race, held our track position. I don't think we fell too far behind. I'd say like 8th or so after the first couple cautions, and we had a good truck. Had a chance to win, almost got by Mitchell when he messed up in turn 3, and the first time when I was under him and the caution came out. I lifted for him in turn 3, and it allowed third place my teammate Alan to get under me and pretty much can't hold on the outside here whatsoever, so my only hope was to do the best I could, and I know I wouldn't fall too far back since there was a lot of damaged cars out there.
There certainly were, but talk about what you think you may have needed. Obviously, you're able to keep your track position. What do you think you were missing from some of the drivers that ended up finishing up front, and even Mitchell DeYoung, who ended up taking down the win?
We were actually thinking that we weren't going to be this good coming in. We felt like we were struggling and weren't finding that much that we thought we would, but we all ran pretty good. Femi, other teammate, was pretty much top 3 speed the whole race, and late race we made some good adjustments and we really had good pace. If I could have just held it on the bottom behind Mitchell, I thought I was equal pace to him after I got back down to the bottom, so if I would have been able to get around him, I think we had a strong enough truck to hold off for the win, but it just wasn't meant to be.
Well, I'm going to ask you one more question here. As someone who's even competed in the top split this season, talk about, you get these late cautions, and I think a lot of our viewers out there really just don't get to grasp the amount of aggression and how desperate these drivers are once you get to the late part of these races. Obviously, you're out front of it in this race, but just talk about what's kind of going through y'all's mindset when you get these late race restarts and you have a bottom dominant track, what you're willing to do to try and defend and attack and get every spot you can late in these races.
Oh yeah, especially when it's a late race, we're all fighting for the one groove. We know that it's so important that if we aren't in that groove, we're going to lose however many spots that are trained behind us, and we know that when it comes down to the end of these races that everybody's going to be aggressive, and we got to look for these aggressive moves and just be aware of our surroundings. And early on in the race, we got people who, they'll give way, they'll realize you're faster, go ahead and have the spot, but when it's late race and we're racing for points like we are in such an important series like this, there's no way that you're just going to want to let somebody go. So you'll see blocking like to the inside, all the way to the yellow line down the front stretch and whatnot, and just trying to hold the bottom.
Well, Steven, I'll hand you the mic one more time. Thank you. You got to thank up here. They got you a top 5.
Of course, got to thank Total Advantage, Landon Huffman. Got to thank everybody, Dead Zone Racing, Alan Bowes, Houston Hammer, Dustin, Femi, everybody over there who helps test, Colin Keiser too. Just everybody out there that puts a lot of work into these things, and we've had great pace, and we hope to keep these great runs going.
Well, Steven Wilson brings it home 5th as we complete the first half of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series. And we have one more driver on tab for you here to round things out. He brought it home in 6th, and he's kind enough to join us now with Jacob Seelman. It's Patriot Briar LaPrade.
I made the quick call on this, not only because I noticed him sneak up there late in the running, but also because it's his first real strong run in top split with Road to Pro this season, as well as his first Road to Pro run as a partner after linking up with Parker Kligerman and the Burton Kligerman Esports bunch. But Briar, for starters, where the heck did you come from late? Because it seemed like we were talking about you on the fringes of the top 10 for most of this race, and then all that carnage late gave you an opening. You avoided a couple of big wrecks, and here you are with a 6th place finish and a shot in the arm going into the second half of this season.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how I ended up P6 there, but yeah, we tried short pitting a little bit there just to see if we can get an advantage, maybe try and catch a yellow there, have some track position. Unfortunately, yellow came out a little too early, so it trapped us a lot down, but we ended up getting the lucky dog, so that was great. Then kind of sat around mid-pack for a little bit there. Some incidents happened. I got caught up in an incident, had about a minute of damage to repair. So it was just kind of just getting through all that. And there was that one big wreck that took out most of the field. Everybody pitted. I had a tire advantage too, because I'm pitting and trying to repair damage from an earlier incident, and everyone else is staying out at the front, of course. But yeah, we ended up P6. After that, I was really surprised, but I'm really happy about it.
How big is this for you, Briar? It's been a big last 2 weeks from the partner status with Burton Kligerman to now a really big top 10 run for you on Road to Pro after a couple of rough weeks. You've got to be flying pretty high right now.
Emotions are high right now because it's just so happy to finally get a good result, because I absolutely need good results for the rest of the season, because I just kind of put myself in a hole. I think points updated fully, maybe, I don't know, but right now as it stands, I'm P44 in points, so a jump from 76 to 44th is awesome. I'll definitely take it. But yeah, like you said, had the partner with Burton Kligerman Esports. I'm so happy about that. It was received well by the community. Obviously, we got a good group of people, and it shows. So yeah, it's just emotions are high. It's great.
Walk me through. I know the process was a lot behind the scenes, but what has this first couple of weeks been like, and just having the opportunity to associate yourself with Burton Kligerman? What was that like when you found out it was official, and what has the last couple of weeks since it became official been like for you?
It's been a crazy ride, like I said. It's just, I never would have thought I would have been at this opportunity. Just, I don't know, it's mind-blowing to me, just sitting playing console games from NASCAR 15, whatever, on console, to come into this and just having some fun with this. And then I started taking it seriously, and I took up on streaming, and that's obviously taken off. Most people know me as Patriot Briar, but I do my thing on Twitch. I try to entertain, I try to teach people. I really think that streaming is what helped me the most, get my name out there and to get noticed. But yeah, like I said, I can't believe that I even had this opportunity. It's just crazy to me.
As we look ahead, you mentioned points, and I'm getting a look at updated points for the first time right now. I'll actually give you a few spots better. Factoring in the drop, you're sitting 40th in the standings right now. A little bit of work to make that top 20, but does a run like this going, coming to the halfway point, is this the momentum, hopefully, to be able to really buckle down and make a run at this in these next 7 races?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the rest of the season coming up is going to be, driver tracks mainly. Tonight definitely, I think, showed. Just you got people that it got spread out tonight. That's the good part about it. It was it was racing instead of being tucked up underneath of each other, and just all this and that. It wasn't super speedway, but tonight it was a short track. We were able to get separated. We had a few wrecks at the end there, of course, but I really think that the last half of the season is going to be driver tracks, and it's going to, put the best on top.
Before we let you go, Briar, and appreciate you sticking around to chat with us as well, but sponsor shout-outs, thank you. Who makes it happen for the whole 19 Toyota Tundra team?
Yeah, of course, I got to thank the team Lockdown Racing, also Horizon. We, work together. But I also got to thank Ledford Billiard Supply, Valvoline, Connecticut Realty, and JDR Graphics, and everybody at Burton Clearman Esports, just for the opportunity. Like I said, it's just crazy to me. But thank you guys so much. That's what we get.
So a sixth-place run and his best of the season. That's Briar LaPrade, who puts the Ledford Billiard Supply Toyota Tundra in strong position heading into the second half of the year. And before we start to wrap things up, I'll first turn to the driver, Michael Guerrilla. Was Richmond what we expected, didn't expect? Where do we look at that?
I think it was pretty much a mixed bag, honestly. I mean, we had the strategy play out at the start between the one-stoppers and the two-stop strategies. We had the caution come out mid-cycle. Had a lot of cautions, a lot of carnage, and a lot of good racing overall. So, I mean, I think it showed a lot better than what we expected throughout the night, and it was pretty good racing overall. Had a lot of good battles throughout the field, especially with De Jong and a few other guys towards the front. Saw comers and goers. So, I mean, you really saw everything that you ever could want in a race.
Blake McCandless, I don't think there were a ton of surprises up inside the top 10, but I think how dominant De Jong's performance was tonight really is the defining factor of this one, and I think it really should scare a whole lot of people going forward that he's not just a threat for wins. I think now he's proved he's a threat for this Road to Pro championship.
Well, I was about to say, I think Michael over there in the booth starting to sweat a little bit, thinking that he might have to race against Mitchell next year in the Coke Series. I mean, Mitchell has just proven time and time again. And again, I can't overstate that it's not like he's had years of experience on the oval side. He just picked it up one random week in November at Las Vegas, because I remember racing against him and you couldn't even touch him. And that's against, some of the best that this sim has to offer. So Mitchell De Jong running this well is not a coincidence at all. And again, I think there are a lot of people up the ranks that are not satisfied that Mitchell De Jong's going to be trying to move his way up the ladder. Obviously, he's done it in Rallycross and a lot of other different avenues in iRacing, but he's starting to do the same thing here on the oval side, and I just don't think we're going to be too surprised here. Oh, by the way, we got to mention another road course is on the schedule. Well, just going to leave that there.
Yeah, just leaving that hanging as if it's an easy target for a third Mitchell De Jong win this season or something. We'll get there as we take a look at the season schedule. Second half of the year, Darlington, Dover, Las Vegas, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, Texas, Martinsville, and Phoenix. And remember, it's not just about the championship. Top 20 transfer. And Justin Prince, to me, that's one of the other storylines at the halfway point of this season is the battle there beyond 20th to get to the top 20 is relatively tight compared to what we've seen in past seasons here, and I think it'll stay that way.
And that's just been the way things have gone for some of the qualifying series, especially in 2020. The talent level has been rising more and more in iRacing, and the challenges have been more and more. This has been one of the most stacked roster of drivers, mind you, looking to battle to get into from Road to Pro to the Pro Qualifier in a long time. I think there's going to be a lot of absolute difficulty for some of these drivers still in the second half of the season to maintain that consistency, because if they slow down for even a couple more races after some of the rough runs for some of these drivers tonight, it's going to put them in a cardboard box that will be very difficult to break out of by the time you get to the road courses or the next time we go to a short track.
And with that, we're going to draw a close to tonight's Podium Esports post-race show and wrap up round 7 of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro. But don't forget, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, back here on Podium Esports. It's the first in-flight 400, paying homage to the old Tyson Holly Farms 400, North Wilkesboro Speedway, and with the 1987 NASCAR Cup Series cars. Again, that's Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then we return next Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern on Podium Esports with the Sim 500 Trans Service Cup Series. Going road racing at Sonoma Raceway. That's June 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern. Funny that we're closing the conversation on road racing after a Mitchell DeYoung victory. But that's going to do it from the virtual Richmond Raceway. Congratulations again to VRS Mitchell DeYoung for picking up the win in the top split of iRacing's Road to Pro for 2020. We'll see you on June 23rd as we kick off the second half of the road towards a shot at $300,000. For Gary Sexton and John Theodore at Podium Esports, as well as Cisco Scaramuza and James Pike, for my broadcast partners tonight, Blake McCandless, Justin Prince, Michael Guerrilla, and our producer, Ryan Bauer, I'm Jacob Seelman. Thank you so much for watching this production of Podium Esports, and we'll see you again Thursday for the first in-flight 400, and back here in 2 weeks for the start of the second half of Road to Pro. Keep it off the virtual wall till we meet again.